calling to order the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of November 9th, 2022, and we will begin with a roll call vote.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I'll take the roll call.
What are we voting on? On that we're here.
You're here.
Thank you. So Chair Grumbine is absent today. Vice Chair House.
I'm here.
Commissioner Butler.
Present?
Commissioner Dorden is out. Commissioner Drury is out. Commissioner Ensberg.
Here.
Commissioner Lenvik.
Here.
Commissioner Manuel.
Here.
And Commissioner Uli.
Here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the item on the agenda is public comment. If any member of the public wants to address the commission for any subject that is not on today's agenda, you would have 2 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. If anyone joining via Zoom would like to speak on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you. Not seeing any raised hands. We did receive written correspondence for general business, and that was from Eli Bajor, which was distributed to the commission prior to the meeting. Back to you.
Don't remember that one. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of October 26, 2022.
Motion to approve minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Uli, second by Lenvik. Are there any changes or edits or corrections? Hearing none, I will call for a vote on that.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I will take the roll call vote. Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lenvik,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner Manuel,
Yes.
and Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals. Staff, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I just have the announcement that Chair Grumbine and Commissioners Drury and Dorden will be absent from today's meeting.
Okay. Then we will move on to subcommittee reports. Are there any of those from anybody here? Does not appear so. And we're kind of racing ahead. And we're doing okay to go on to item number 1, which is a historic structures report for 3237 State Street. It's a request for acceptance of a historic structures and sites report for 3237 State Street, September 2022, associated with the transfer of the property out of federal ownership to American Indian Health and Services. The transfer is subject to review under the National Environmental Policy Act and Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. The HSSR conforms with the requirements of Section 106 and the City of Santa Barbara Municipal Code, Chapter 30.157, and the city's Master Environmental Assessment with guidelines for historic structures and sites. No development is proposed as part of this HSSR review request. The report concluded that the building is eligible for national, state, and local designation. So if you would give your names for the record and your presentation. And staff, you have something to...
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair House and Commissioners. I just wanted to do a little introduction to historic structures reports for some of the newer commissioners and some why we trigger historic structures reports, just as a quick background. So some historic structures reports are triggered by Section 106 in the National Environmental Protection Act, as this one is. So that would be where the city doesn't call for one, but it's required when a project's using either federal funds, like lots of our bridges, when we saw lots of historic structures reports on those, or the roundabout that we saw a couple years ago, or it is a federal building. So those are required, and Sarah will go into more detail on what she did for that requirement. We also the California Environmental Quality Act requires evaluation, and I do some of those evaluations that are simple and straightforward and meet the Secretary of Interior standards. I'll call a structures report when they get more complex. Typically, if it's a full demolition of a building, or sometimes like a huge apartment building going next to a small historic building. And the commission always can call for one as well if you feel you need more information. We've done that a couple times, but not very often. Just a reminder, when we do call them, and one reason staff does try and take care of small and simple ones where the applicant's clearly not causing a negative impact is the cost and time it adds to a project. They are several $1,000s at the minimum and add a couple months to a project. So we try to work with the applicant, streamline our process, and help them get through, especially when it's pretty clear that they're doing the right thing. And I am confident that the commission can just massage the design to get them where they need to be. So that is why we got here again. Minor projects, I'll do the memos for CEQA, which you all see often, and the highly visible ones, we'll call them bigger, full reports. Sometimes we'll just get one that appears where an applicant has gone and hired one without consulting with us. We try not to do that because we don't want applicants in the community to think we're too arduous and we call one for every single project, but sometimes that happens. So that's just framing a little framework why we're here today and what this report is in front of you.
Thank you. And just for the sake of asking, if the report is approved, or maybe even if it's not, if this comes back in the future for alterations to the building, we would be the reviewing body. Is that correct?
That's correct. Once the conclusions of a report find a building significant for CEQA purposes, it goes on that historic resources inventory automatically as per our ordinance. That is because it has an evidence on record that it's significant, and CEQA requires anything with a preponderance of evidence be on that inventory.
So this is not already on the inventory?
This is not.
Okay.
If you accept it today, it will be.
Right.
This
Okay.
one's a little different. Sarah will say because
A little interesting.
it's already been, through the Section 106 process, it's been reviewed by a cadre of historic professionals
Yeah.
on the state and federal level. So
You got all these fine architecture.
we're the
details to
we're the last
evaluate
ones
and
to review it. We're the first, but
sterile hallways and.
Okay.
Okay, names for the record, please, and then your presentation.
Sarah Quarter, architectural historian. Beth Collins, land use attorney for the project.
Thank you so much for your time, Commissioners. I'm here to present the HSSR for the Fremont Hall United States Army Reserve building that is located at 3237 State Street at the corner of State Street and Las Positas Road. The property was originally part of the Hoff General Army Hospital. Following the closure of the hospital, the site was selected to be the location of the Santa Barbara U.S. Army Reserve Center. Construction began on the site in 1955, and the current building received its planned expansion in 1961. The building is a rare and intact example of a sprawling plan facility that was designed for the U.S. Army by New York-based architects Reisner and Urban. At the local level, Wallace Arndt was brought on to oversee the design and construction of the building. His contributions created the more aesthetically pleasing stucco-clad, simple mid-century modern style building that reflected both utilitarianism and restraint that was common in post-war military architecture. Today, the building stands as one of the most intact and excellent examples of post-war U.S. Army Reserve centers in the country. I kind of skipped my advanced slide, so my apologies, Commissioners. This is what the site looks like today. The property in question is proposed for ownership transfer from the federal government to American Indian Health Services, or AIHS. Since the property is proposed to be transferred out of federal ownership, the Section 106 process was undertaken to determine if there were any adverse effects to known historic properties. Under Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, the property must be either evaluated or reevaluated to determine if it retains sufficient historical significance and integrity to convey that significance. To meet the requirements of Section 106, an HSSR was prepared and provides an updated evaluation of the property. As demonstrated in the HSSR in front of you today, the building maintains sufficient integrity to continue to convey its historical significance and eligibility as determined in 2007. In addition to the carryover of the recommendation of NRHP and CRHR eligibility, the current HSSR also demonstrates the property's ability to rise to level of significance under the city's structure of merit program under criteria 1 and 3. Our goal in appearing before you today is to obtain approval on the current HSSR so that the property can be transferred over to AIHS. Once transferred, AIHS plans to move forward with designation of the property and undertake a substantial rehabilitation in conformance with the Secretary of the Interior standards to convert the existing building into a health services clinic to support the local community. Given the unique history of this property and the rarity of this resource type, I wanted to take a moment to walk you through all of the significance findings. From the standpoint of eligibility, it was previously determined to be eligible for the National Register and the CRHR for criteria 3C, which is for its architecture and representation of the property type of a United States Army Reserve building. The State Historic Preservation Office concurred on those findings in 2007, and the building still today retains excellent integrity and historical significance. For those same reasons, we are recommending that the property is eligible under the structure of merit criteria 1 and 3. Under criterion 1, the building has a significant connection to post-World War II construction of U.S. Army Reserve centers in the U.S., and it also has a strong military history, being the site of the Hoff General Army Hospital. We also have associations with local architects. We have a rare and intact example of a Reisner and urban architectural plan. We have the use of significant local materials, which is stucco, and this is the only stucco one that remains in the U.S. today. So that was quite interesting to find out. And we have an example of a utilitarian application of the mid-century modern style. That concludes my presentation for today. Beth and I are here to answer any questions that you have on the HSSR or explain anything about Section 106 process and where we go from here.
Thank you very much. We will, if that concludes your presentation, we'll go on to public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I currently do not have anyone participating via Zoom, and I don't have any speaker slips, and we did not receive public comment for this item.
And there's nobody else in the room.
And that too.
Okay, I'll close public comment and go on to questions from the commission.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Butler.
can you share with us a little bit more about AIHS, their governing authority? I'll just stop there. Can you tell us more about them?
Sure. American Indian Health and Service is a nonprofit clinic like neighborhood clinics. They provide healthcare services to various patients. They are also an urban Indian. So what that means is they provide health care to urban Indians who are living in our Santa Barbara area. That is something that was created to allow, when a lot of Native Americans moved off reservations, to designate an urban Indian system around the country to provide care. But that's only a small percentage of their patients. They also otherwise serve the same populations that the county health clinics serve, and neighborhood clinics, et cetera. And a lot of the doctors that you're familiar with around town are also providing expert services. When I toured my first time, I saw my ear, nose, and throat doctor there. She does a service there a day a week to provide those kind of specialty services to the local population. So they've been operating in Upper State for 30 plus years. They rent about 16,000 square feet, and they want to be landowners instead of tenants for obvious reasons. So this opportunity came around where American IHS, Indian Health Services, was able to acquire from the Army once they designated the property excess. It's not surplus, it's excess. Once they designated that property excess, then GSA took it, and then IHS took it, and then IHS is going to transfer it to AIHS. And AIHS is actually operating out of it right now under a arrangement with IHS.
real alphabet soup.
It is a lot of acronyms in healthcare.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
So they're an independent,
They're a nonprofit.
they're a nonprofit, they're independent, they're not associated or governed by any of the Native American tribes, et cetera, correct?
Correct. There are certain rules with a certain percentage of Native Americans need to be on their board, but they are not affiliated with any tribe. In fact, Urban Indian is separate from tribe. So that is a different form of healthcare services, and it's provided through nonprofit, just like neighborhood clinics. So that's why we need this historic evaluation, because NEPA is triggered the moment it is transferred from federal to non-federal ownership. And since it will be transferred from federal ownership to this nonprofit, that triggers NEPA and the need to include protections for the historic resource.
And then the transfer is for not only the structures, but the entire acreage. I think
Correct.
it was 2.7 acres or something in the, so it's the lot all-inclusive, correct?
Correct.
Other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Commissioner Lenvick.
On figure 2, the boundary shown there is strange and beyond the buildings, but not including what I assume is all of the property.
I wondered about that also.
Yeah. So can you explain why, what the implications of that boundary are?
Our files are here, like, it's just the presentation, but it's.
Pardon my interruption through the chair. It looks like page 9.
Yeah, I was looking for the page.
We don't have.
No, I just printed it.
You can have mine.
Sorry, Beth.
Here, right here's
I can let Beth speak to the legal
yes.
side of it. There was some discrepancy in the parcel information when the project began. So that was the parcel designation when the project began and when the entire Section 106 process started. So it retained in their support because that was the project area at the time.
So, and it was actually the parcel. And you correctly spotted that the parcel doesn't include all of the pavement, right?
Yes.
And so actually, there was a vote of the people back years ago in Santa Barbara to approve a land swap, because you'll also notice on this other corner, it includes a corner of the bus stop, et cetera. So that's now, there's been a land swap, and city land, the city took the bus stop area and it gave this corner area. So the parcel has been modified. That has all been run through the county recorder, et cetera. And as I said, there is a requirement that any transfer of parkland in the city of Santa Barbara has to be subject to a vote of the people. So there actually was a vote of the people approving that land swap. So the area is the parcel.
So the area is a parcel.
The fenced area, I would suppose.
That means, I would assume that that one maintenance building, which is almost outside of the parcel, is not part of your report.
The maintenance building is the OMS building. That building is part of the report and is included within the property and parcel boundary. It was built in 1961.
So, while this figure 2 parcel boundary is where you started, is there a different parcel boundary at the present time?
The parcel boundary has been modified, but to Sarah's point, any structure that matters for this purpose is within the project area that's described here. I don't think that corner of the pavement has a historic, no. So all the structures are included on the project area that she has described here.
So would you
in
be
figure 2.
modifying this figure 2 or not? To reflect accuracy or not?
It's a good question. I think we could probably modify it
Yeah.
if that would be your
It's
recommendation, honestly.
not a big deal as far as I'm concerned, but I just wondered if there's any reason the city would want it corrected.
It's not a question SHPO's raised or anyone else has raised. I think since all the buildings are on that area of potential effect and all the buildings are described in the report and going to be designated, that would end up getting to the same place, but I'll defer to the city.
That's the only question I had.
Well, question, and to that point, I think it might help to know anything about easements, et cetera, around the perimeter so that we understand precisely the footprint that's being governed, just for documentation and reference purposes going forward.
Is there a legal description of the parcel in the report?
There is, yes.
Meets and bounds?
When we do the designation, we'll do the proper parcel boundary.
Yes.
So
Okay,
we do it by
Yeah.
parcel.
That's a good
When we designate, that way half a parcel isn't going to two different boards or something.
Yeah.
It just makes it cleaner.
And your
Simple.
designation will list all the structures, right?
It will.
Yeah, so that's really, any modifications or changes, anything associated with the structures will, right? Even modifications on neighboring parcels that could arguably impact those resources would even have to consider potential historic issues, right?
If they came with a project.
Or if they, okay.
Yeah, we evaluate if they come in with a project, not.
To your example of the very large apartment building next to the teeny little historic building, even a neighbor has to consider historic resources around it, is my point.
Yes, we have them mapped for that purposes and tagged so that we can make sure people are considering that when they start planning. Even if they go to other boards, if it's not historic, they'd go to another board, but they have a finding that says they have to be compatible with surrounding resources. So we let them know what they're next to so that they're not looking and reviewing in a tunnel.
Well, the property must have been surveyed, right? You write down to 2.81 acres, so you have a
There's a
survey.
yes.
So that should be sufficient to
Yeah.
present, correct?
So
Try
what
to
I,
make this easy for you.
I think what's easy is, what I think I heard Nicole just say is, when you designate, you'll designate for the parcel. It probably doesn't matter anyway, since once the resources are designated, everyone, even people around, would have to think about potential impacts to the resources, and certainly anything modifying those buildings would have to be considering impacts to resources, so I think you'd be covered with that.
Are there other questions? Apparently not, so comments?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Uli?
I thought that the HSSR was sufficiently documenting what's going on. I would suggest, though, for accuracy's sake, that Figure 2 be revised to show the actual boundary. As others have said, we reference these documents, and it would just be misinformation. So I support its adoption.
Any other comments?
Those two maintenance buildings are,
There's one maintenance building, is there?
Yeah,
Auditorium, or assembly hall, and maintenance building.
on that far east side, in that Plan 2, those two buildings that are on the far east side are garages, maintenance buildings, whatever, right?
Yes, it's the one building on the east side that you're referring to. It's on the screen.
Well, that's one building there.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, it's one building, okay. That building was built in 1961, I
Yes.
believe. And the period of significance is up to 1956.
Originally, in the 2007 evaluations, they established the period of significance to be 1956 because that is the date of completion. In our report, we are saying that it is actually 1956 to 1961 to make sure that we attach the expansion plan that was done, which was also a Reisner and urban plan. They intended for these buildings to be expanded once the programming was expanded. So the assembly hall that is to the rear of the building and the OMS, which is the maintenance shop that we're talking about, those were part of the 1961 expansion. So our HSSR is recommending that the period of significance be expanded.
Okay, well, I guess you've answered my questions. I forget the years that the original architect was in existence.
The original architect, Reisner, He was actually no longer practicing architect.
Somebody in urban.
Reisner and Urban, they were a firm until 1954. They designed these buildings in the early 1950s, post-war, and then they kind of split up, but the Army continued to take their plans and continue to reuse them throughout the U.S.
So they did not design the one maintenance building then?
They did. They had plans for expansions, and that was part of their expansion.
Okay, I'm done.
Expansion series.
I'm done.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
You're not getting any road.
We like to appear tough.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Butler.
So I was pleased to see the condition of the building. I actually had to report there for the draft at one point in time. So I've been inside that building, although it was a long time ago. So it was great to see, yes, others, to see the condition of the building, and I would support the proposal.
Who would like to make a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to adopt the HSSR for the subject property.
Second.
Thank you, and that would be with the comments that we would like to see a more accurate depiction of the parcel boundary.
That figure 2 be modified to show the actual boundary.
Okay, and there was one other comment, but,
That was the only one.
okay, all right. So I'll call for a roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I'll take the roll call vote. Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lenvick,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner Manuel,
Yes.
and Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck with that project.
Interesting reading.
We're excited.
Hopefully they don't get too stuck with the building department and change of use.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see, 2:15.
And Vice Chair House, I do not see our applicants for the
No.
next item. Wondering if we should recess for,
Oh, these clocks haven't been changed.
yeah, so sorry about that.
We've chewed
It's
up
about-
an hour and a half.
Yeah.
in 5 minutes.
It's about 2 o'clock.
Yeah, okay.
Is Rosie Dyster in the building?
What's that?
I say we could do the objective design standard update if she was in the building, staff.
We need to, the earliest we can start any item is 15 minutes before its
Yeah.
agendized time, just in case the public wishes to attend and is
Yeah.
not here
Well,
or
it's
not watching.
Oh, the clock hasn't been adjusted yet.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, technically, we could start in 1 minute, but since we don't have the applicant here, I might suggest we reconvene in maybe 5 to 10 minutes at your call, just depending on when the applicant shows up.
Okay, we will recess the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting.
It's 2 o'clock. I mean,
Yeah.
we could say 5 minutes, and then you can always extend it another 5 minutes if we have our
Okay,
applicant
for
here.
5 minutes.
Okay.
2022 meeting of the Historic Landmarks Commission. So we'll start with the staff comments. Well, let me introduce the
Yeah, let's-
item. Let's see, this is item 2, 1230 East De La Guerra Street. The site contains a Spanish colonial revival-style residence constructed in 1940 that is listed on the city's historic resources inventory. This is a proposal to construct the following to an existing 2,431 square foot, 2-story, single-unit residence with an attached 1-car garage, a 178 square foot addition to the first floor, and a 172 square foot addition to the second floor, a 296 square foot upper level deck, 296 square foot covered patio below, and Juliet balconies in the rear. The proposed total of 2,781 square feet of development on a 10,000 square foot lot is 75% of the maximum required floor to, required or allowed, floor to lot area ratio. The project is located within the Hillside Design District and has an average slope of 20%. Project design approval is requested. Project compatibility findings and major alterations findings will be required. So, we'll go to staff first.
Okay, I just want to framework the project and how it got here. It's on the Historic Resources Inventory, and then just as a reminder for some of the newer commissioners and the applicants, we keep that inventory as a requirement of the California Environmental Quality Act, which does require that any project, any resource that may be eligible to be designated unless there's a preponderance of evidence that demonstrates it's not historically significant needs to be evaluated to the Secretary of Interior standards. So that's why we keep the inventory even though all the buildings aren't designated, and we send them to the Historic Landmarks Commission for your expertise to make sure they meet those standards. The other boards don't have expertise in that. When we bring, they're under your jurisdiction, so if there's no designation hearing scheduled, the commission's just evaluating the project. And this does give the applicant a security in knowing when they come in and they're routed to you that they will have the consistency of your board's review from start to finish. It is here, we've edited that Historic Resources Ordinance in 2021 to sort of help streamline that process so that when applicants came in, we could get them to the inventory and to the right board, sorting them when they come in. As I said, you are the experts in historic resources, the standards, and CEQA. So just as a reminder, we also have guidelines to help you evaluate additions, and we've gone through these several times. We went through these last time, but I do evaluate them to the guidelines and the standards in the memo for you. And we also have the Secretary of Interior standards. So if you have any questions on either of those, that would be great. And just, we also have a guideline on styles that are predominant in Santa Barbara. This one falls under the Spanish Colonial Revival style, which is so key to the city's identity. We have high style ones, grand buildings, and also minimal, modest examples that we've discussed before that really help people from all levels of income contribute to the city's identity. And this one in particular was found to be a representation of that style for some of the following character defining features. The setting on the streetscape, the whole streetscape has similar stucco Spanish style buildings, so it really has a sense on the street. It has the terracotta tiles that really emphasize that decorative edge to the simple plaster and stucco finish. This one has the complex voids and masses, especially in the roof lines with the hip and the extending gables coming out. It also has on the side a sweeping staircase and an interplay of volumes as the undulating gables and recessed porch play against each other. It has these 3 stucco vents under the open gables, which is a key character-defining feature. It has this covered front little small porch, not the big expansive porches of the Victorian era. And it has these tower-like chimneys, which are in themselves decorative. One interesting item I found the original drawings, and that Joe Sakonagi was known as one of the Riviera's one of the talented Italian stonemasons that came to Santa Barbara, and this was his house. His name was on the plans. No architects' names were, but it said for him as the owner. So his family lived here. And we all know how much we love the sandstone in the Lower Riviera. It's a precious resource. And this is another set of the drawings. This is some of the houses on the streetscape, so you get a sense that there's a lot of similar buildings. This is a late interpretation of the style, as it was built in 1940, which is rare to see any buildings built in 1940, as the Depression and the war wasn't the big boom that we had in the 20s. I found that the project is tucked away in the rear and minimally visible to the street, and it does not destroy any of the historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that really characterize the property. The roof of the rear extends like with another gable that mimics those on the front, but not impacting the roof lines on the front. The new windows will match the existing. The only alteration of that building is the original windows are not there, and they are aluminum clad. And the additions features will match the existing to be compatible with the resource. And the rear addition is compatible in size, scale, and proportion. It really just sits under the current elevation because it's 1 story in the front, 2 story in the back because of the elevation change. So it will not be overwhelming the historic resource in any way, and it's subordinate and secondary to the building, and it has these proposed arches that are compatible in keeping with the Spanish colonial revival style. And, it goes, there's more if you want, but I think that sums it up.
I have a question for you. I wasn't aware about the stonemason provenance, but, and I wasn't looking for it accordingly, but is there stonemasonry in this project?
There isn't. I didn't see it. I mean, along the streetscape, there's stone because it's the Lower Riviera, but I didn't see any out there.
Yeah, interesting.
Only on the front.
Only on the front.
Yeah, it's interesting. So.
Okay. Does that conclude your
Yes,
presentation? Great. So, welcome.
Hi, I'm Dawn Sherry. I'm the architect for the project, and with me is Paul Sagat, the project manager in our office. And thank you, Nicole. And I'm done. No, just kidding. Our clients bought this house because they loved it so much, and it is a really good example of a simple Spanish colonial revival, as Nicole pointed out, and they basically just needed to expand it a little bit because of their growing family, and house is really small on the inside, and the best way to do that is to extend. If you want to go to really quickly, the site plan is along the back in the gray. Is a new in the gray on the left is a new bathroom addition, and on the right is a new balcony, because there's not any outdoor private yard that is connected to the main level of the house. That's the kitchen area, and if you go to the floor plan, the main level floor plan, you can see that the kitchen on the right-hand side of the page, now we're adding a balcony, and from that I'll call it the upper level, it's the main level balcony, you have really fantastic views of the ocean and the city. And then you can see the other area that we're adding onto the house is the master bathroom addition. And there's a perfect little nook between the 2 bedrooms to put that master bedroom, but it was a little tricky about how to get the roof lines to work out. And so I'm being sensitive to the existing roof lines. So going to the elevations, you can see there how we're kind of nestling that gable in to the existing roof lines. There's already a flat roof off the back of the house that represents the master bedroom below it. So going to the 2.1 sheet. The front is not affected at all. The next sheet is the side, or the west, or the south, sorry, the south elevation. And you can see that on the right-hand page is that new balcony. And that balcony wants to be grounded to the yard, the lower level. So instead of doing a wood structure, we've decided to support it with plaster columns and a softened arch. The reason we didn't do 2 arches is because it looked busy and we just like the simplicity of the single softened arch. That's also going to allow them to use that area as private open yard space for, we just got a permit for an ADU, which is the garage conversion, which to the left of the arch is the door to the ADU. It's already an existing garage that we're converting. And that is, you can see the new gable behind the master bedroom on the right-hand side above the arches. Next page is the back elevation. The existing rear elevation is really simple. It's not unattractive, but there's a big yard in the back that's not connected to the upper level, and kind of looking back at it, it looks really closed off from, I mean, it's completely isolated from the house. So this was an attempt to make the back of the house look more representative of a, just adding some detail and some interest to the rear elevation, but picking up on the cues of the gable roof that's on the front, and also to bring in more light. The master bathroom has replacing a window with a Juliet balcony so that room is really bright. And then in the master bedroom's really small. So bringing a French door down with another Juliet balcony allows more of an open feel. And also when you're laying in bed now, you can look out to the ocean and the city without feeling claustrophobic. Those high sills on that existing bedroom they're high, and you can't really see out of them. So then when you're moving over to the kitchen area, no, sorry, Paul, go back. Then moving over to the kitchen area, that kitchen window also is really small. So by enlarging it and making it a bigger window, we can have more access from the balcony to the kitchen. And then now you can actually walk out from the kitchen to the balcony. And that is a longer span, so we did break up that archway into 2 sections. And wrought iron balconies, exposed detailed beam corbels supporting them, windows and doors to match existing finishes, everything to match existing. And I think, do we have anything else on this?
On the side.
I don't think, how many more, do we have any more pages? No, that's just showing the addition from the north elevation, the new bedroom on the left-hand side with 2 higher windows so that they don't loom over and look into the neighbor. And these are the photos of the existing house. Nicole didn't really show this view, which is the southeast elevation, and go to the next page. She showed you the front. Keep going. Across the
running
street.
it versus,
Yeah, keep going. And then across the street, and that's it. And I think what we'd love to get would be project design approval so we can start getting into structural engineering and get this project going, if possible.
Pretty pleased.
If possible.
Does that conclude
Yeah,
your presentation? Thank you. I'll open it to public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. If anyone participating via Zoom would like to speak on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you. Not seeing any raised hands. I don't have any speaker slips, and then we did not receive any written correspondence for this item either. Back to you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll open it to the commission for questions.
I have one question that I can think of.
Commissioner Uli.
On the east elevation, I think that's facing the rear yard. Is there any thought of getting a stair to the yard from that balcony to connect the yard to the balcony?
We did think about that, and we just decided that since there was already a staircase, this one that you're seeing on the south, we thought we'd leave it for another time, and they didn't really think that they would use it.
All right, thank you.
I had a question. You referenced a flat roof when we were looking at the floor plan, but I don't, or the roof plan, but I don't see that reflected in the elevations.
It's not really flat, it's the low pitch, it's existing that way. That's the master bedroom roof, existing roof.
Okay, so it's like a 2 and 12, 2.5 and 12. Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Ansberg.
Thank you, thank you. Could you talk a little bit about the area below the deck, that open area with the big arch you were talking about? And is that an open covered patio? Is that what we're seeing? And this is facing the street, right?
No,
It's the
it's
other.
not, none of that. That's
Okay.
the street elevation. You can't see any of this from the
Okay,
street.
okay. Okay, so could you go back to that elevation? And then, I guess that's my question, is just how would that get used? It seems like it's a little remote. How do you get there and how do you use
It's,
it?
the ADU that is next to it will be using that as their little private area.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? Don't all talk at once now. Does anybody care to make a motion for a PDA?
I think the project is well cared for and supportable.
And was that a motion?
No.
Oh,
I agree, and I would make the motion.
okay, motion by Commissioner Ansberg,
Second.
second by Butler. Let's see, so we need the project compatibility findings and major alterations findings. You get to read them off. It gets easier after you've done it a few times.
And Vice Chair House,
Oh, right
I'm-
here, okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we would also need you to accept the findings of the memo from Ms. Hernandez that
Okay, so you
Okay.
agree to those
Right.
reports, the findings in the reports by architectural historian Nicole Hernandez?
Correct, what you just said.
Yeah.
And finding the project, the compatibility findings of consistency with design guidelines. Is the design of the project consistent with the design guidelines applicable to the location of the project within the city? I would say yes. Compatible with architectural character of city and neighborhood? Is the design of the project compatible with the desirable architectural qualities and characteristics which are distinctive of Santa Barbara and of the particular neighborhood surrounding the project? Yes. And is the appropriate size, mass, bulk, height, and scale? Is the size, mass, bulk, height, and scale of the project appropriate for its location and its neighborhood? Based on the presentation we saw, yes.
And then there's page 2.
Okay, page 2.
It goes on.
Okay, am I doing this right? Is this how I should do it? Okay. Number 4, sensitivity to adjacent landmarks and historic resources. Is the design of the project appropriately sensitive to adjacent federal, state, and city landmarks and other nearby designated historic resources, including city structures of merit, sites, or natural features? Yes. 5, public views of the ocean and mountains. Does the design of the project respond appropriately to established scenic public vistas? According to the reports we received, yes. And 6, use of open space and landscaping. Does the project include an appropriate amount of open space and landscaping? Yes, I think that the project demonstrates these findings.
Okay, now you've got another set to do.
Okay, I won't do this
No.
again. No, just kidding. Major alterations to a historic resource findings. I'm honored to do this. It's a very nice project. One, the exterior alterations are being made to restore the historic resource to its original appearance or in order to substantially aid its preservation or enhancement as a historic resource. And two, the exterior alterations are consistent with the Secretary of the Interior's standards.
There's 5 more pages. No, just
I
kidding.
need to get a glass of water. Is that,
No, you got it, you got it.
is that it? Okay.
You're done.
Well, thank you for
Okay,
bearing
I'll
with me.
call the question.
My first time.
Or,
And then if
call for a
Mr.
roll call
Butler,
vote.
the seconder, can agree to that? Does he agree?
I agree. Second. Perfect. You get to do it every time.
Yeah.
And I will go ahead and take the roll call vote. Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Lenvick,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner Manuel,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
and Vice Chair House.
Yes,
Motion passes. Thank you.
thank you.
And Mr. House, if you could announce the 10-day appeal.
Oh, and there
process.
is a 10-day period to appeal this to City Council, this decision. Thank you. You too.
Thank you for your service.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Vice Chair, it is 2:30, and we are able to start 15 minutes ahead of time, so
Okay.
we have Ms. Deisty here, so we can keep moving.
So the next item on the agenda is item 3, and this is a discussion item. And this is the Objective Design and Development Standards Update, presented by Rosie Deisty, Project Planner in the Planning Division. And she'll be presenting an update of the Objective Design and Development Standards draft.
Just this. Do I just advance to get the,
Page after page down.
okay, there we are. Great. Good afternoon, members of the commission. I'm Rosie Deisty, Project Planner with the Long Range Planning Division, and I'm here to give you an overview on the Objective Design Standards project. So again, the topics today will be a very brief overview of the Objective Design and Development Standards. I'll also talk about how to participate in this project and go over the schedule. So the presentation I'm giving you right now is the same one that our consultant Opticos Design gave to the work group about a month ago or so. And it provides an overview of the Objective Design and Development Standards that are now provided to us in an admin draft format. And I want to emphasize that it is an administrative draft, and we decided to release this draft to everyone at the same time. So the public, the work group, staff, your boards and commissions. And so we do know there will be a lot of edits to this admin draft, and that's why we have a long review period, and we want to get your input because we want the best product we can get before we move forward with it. So I just want to emphasize that, you know, there's a lot of review going on to this document. So why we are doing this is that the idea behind the whole project was to develop objective design standards for multi-unit and mixed-use projects, ultimately to increase housing production, but also because there are new state laws that are increasingly requiring objective review for housing projects. And that is by providing a more predictable and efficient process for these projects, but we want them to also result in quality design that lines up with our community's expectations. So what's been completed so far, we hired Opticos Design to be our consultant on this project. They did research and a background memo, but what we have before us today is these administrative draft standards being proposed as a new title in the city's municipal code, Title 25, and it includes the standards plus a map that sort of shows where the standards apply. So now I'm just going to walk through what's actually in the document. It starts with a quick code guide for how to use them, and this would be something useful for staff and applicants, sort of step by step how to use this new code. By starting with your zoning envelope, you connect your ground floor to the streetscape, you design your building. If you're using signs, there's some standards for those, and then you would proceed to the approval process. The next chapter goes through what they call a palette of zones and standards, and Opticos has determined for our community there are 5 different zones that are applicable, and they range from lower intensity house scale buildings to higher intensity block scale buildings, and they have their own names for these zones, but they start with neighborhood small, then they go to neighborhood medium, Main Street medium, neighborhood large, and Main Street large. And then when you go beyond that, it has standards for each of those zones. The example shown here is neighborhood medium, but each of them would have the same set of standards where it talks about the intent. It goes into your building size, height standards, setbacks, encroachments, parking standards, all the sort of normal things you would see in a zoning ordinance for buildings. So there's great detail and illustrations to kind of show what they're talking about. Also in chapter 3 is a section, it's not very long, but it's something in particular I would really like input from your commission. These are what they call additional height and massing requirements. And we asked Opticos to consider, there's a lot of situations in the city because we have a lot of infill development where a new building is going in next to, maybe there's a taller building going into next to where there's house scale buildings. And so what are some considerations we can do that are objective so that we achieve neighborhood compatibility? It's something that often occurs through design review, but if we're not having multiple design review meetings, how are we going to get to that point? There's also, in particular for Historic Landmarks Commission, what do you do if your new building is next to a historic resource or in the same block as a historic resource? So that's part C, I believe, of this section. There's also considerations if your new building is next to an existing building and the existing building wasn't built to the height that it could have been built to. So what are some considerations for that? So this is a section we'd love to get your input on. Then the next chapter that's important to look at are the general standards. These are site design standards that would be applicable to any building that's using these standards. So specifically, they included screening, landscape and lighting, parking and loading, sloped parcels, frontages, privacy, and rooftop decks. And we did ask them, I don't think they've done standards for rooftop decks before, Opticos Design, but we asked them to include them because we see those a lot in Santa Barbara. So that's another one we'd love your input on. Chapter 6 includes then the standards that are coordinated to the building size. Again, they focus on this sort of difference between block scale areas and home scale areas. And they also have something that's sort of interesting and new for us. They have, if somebody has a fairly large lot, they have this concept called design sites where you can basically, you don't technically split the lot, but you have these different lot areas that can accommodate different building forms and sizes. And that way the mass is broken up a little bit because you might have a large lot with several different building forms and sizes. And those new design sites, if they're large enough to be meet our city's minimum lot size, they could be split off and sold separately, or they're just somewhat imaginary, and once the project is built, they're not really in effect anymore. This chapter also includes standards for different building types. So Opticos has included for our jurisdiction about 11 different building types to consider, and they range from duplexes, fourplexes, sort of multiplexes up to larger, what they call, I think it's courtyard apartments, townhouses, and Main Street buildings. Sorry, I'll go back to this one a little bit. And then for each of those building types, then it goes into details about the massing and the size and where the parking goes on the lot and things like that. Another section that's sort of interesting and different for us is frontage type standards. And there's sort of an overarching theme in our city and also in these standards that we're a pedestrian-friendly city and we want our buildings to have really good frontages. So they have standards to accommodate that, and they're actually required on all building types that they're front-facing, pedestrian-friendly, and they include things like porches, stoops, shop fronts, arcades, and galleries. Chapter 8's another chapter we'd love your particular input on. This is where we get into architectural design. And per the contract we had with Opticos, we had enough funding to essentially focus on 3 main style groups, and then within those groups there's 2 different subsets. There's also a map that shows where these styles would apply, and per our zoning ordinance, if it's within El Pueblo Viejo, only the Mediterranean style group is allowed. Otherwise, elsewhere in the city, all style groups are allowed. That's their initial take on this, and we want input from the public and boards and commissions on whether other areas of the city should consider limiting styles or not. So when you get into the 3 style groups, they have a craftsman style that has a craftsman substyle and a cottage substyle. Mediterranean style group has Spanish Revival and Italian Mediterranean. And the contemporary style group has contemporary and industrial style. And then it talks about what the different characteristics of those styles are and what sort of standards they've included. So I can walk you through a couple more examples of that. These pages highlight the contemporary style group, but it has photos to show typical characteristics. It goes into the elements of the style, and then it breaks down into windows, walls, roofs, things like that. Again, it'll go into more detail about the appropriate dimensions of roofs, eaves, parapets, windows, things like that. We'd really like your input on these very specific architectural standards. Again, the signage chapter was something we weren't anticipating receiving, but it's something Opticos has done for other jurisdictions, so we told them, go ahead and create them for us. What may happen is there's a separate effort to update the city's sign ordinance, and these standards might go hand in hand with that update to that ordinance and be reviewed and handled separately, but for now it's here, and if you want to comment on them, that's fine. Almost getting to the end. There's another chapter specific to civic spaces, and these are required on larger lots, and the idea was to have some standards for plazas, pocket parks, paseos, playgrounds, things like that, that are appropriate for our city. That would be an interesting chapter to get your input on as well. Chapter 11 allows some relief from the standards. So if an applicant wants to use these standards, but they need some very specific exceptions for particular circumstances, this chapter goes through all the exceptions that would be allowed. And what I didn't say at the beginning, but what is someone who wants to design a project that does not meet these standards is still allowed to do that, and they would still go through the existing design review process. So if they have very different architecture or other reasons they don't want to use these standards, it's still an option to do what they do now. Okay, finally, last chapter includes a pretty comprehensive set of definitions and measurement methods. So the ways to participate are, we do have a website for this project, and that's where we post all the draft documents that's listed here. I highly recommend, if you have the time, to look at a very quick, I think it's about 4 minutes, project overview video that's on that site. It kind of gives a very general overview of the whole reason why we're doing objective standards and what they mean. We also have a really good fact sheet there that's linked. Anyone who goes to the website can sign up to be notified for any kind of future hearings or draft document postings. That's where you can review the draft. And we also posted a visual preferences survey. That was a way to get the public a little more engaged in this and give us their thoughts on different building types and if they like how they look and if they're appropriate for Santa Barbara. And you're welcome to take that survey too. So we released the admin draft in October and had a work group meeting that Opticos attended as well, and they kind of went through the same presentation I just briefly went through now. We're continuing public outreach and continuing, we hope to meet with the work group again soon so we can answer questions and delve into it a little deeper. We're asking the public to wrap up their comments by about mid-December on this, and then we do plan to come back to your commission and also the Architectural Board of Review and probably have a longer meeting and get your, answer questions and get your specific input on the document. Then we'll want to package all this input together, get it back to Opticos so they can revise the draft for us. And that concludes my presentation.
Well, thank you very much. So we'll open it to public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. If anyone joining via Zoom would like to speak on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you. Not seeing any raised hands. I also don't have any speaker slips, and
I thought there'd be a vast audience out there.
and we don't have any written correspondence.
Okay.
Back to you.
Thank you. I'll close public comment and go on to questions from the commission.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Butler.
So on the overview map, because I actually did watch the video and I went through all the materials, it's very impressive. It's a lot of work. The color codes, does that pertain to the intensity zones? Is that, I didn't see a legend to associate with that, what the different colors related to on the map itself.
Okay, Commissioner Butler, yes, the colors do somewhat correspond with intensity. You can kind of, I don't have the map in front of me, but it kind of goes from lighter colors to darker colors.
Whatever.
Yeah, so the existing R2 neighborhoods are in sort of light yellow, and then the colors intensify and get darker as you go towards downtown where the block scale buildings would be.
And so that's based on current building structures and the volume or the capacity within those locations.
Correct.
Currently today.
Yeah, as part of the, before drafting these for us, Opticos did site visits and an existing conditions memo, and so they looked what's on the ground and then drafted their map accordingly.
Commissioner Lenvick.
Yes, I have a question. You reference form-based zoning being used in the document. And that doesn't supersede the zoning ordinance, I would think. It's a question.
Commissioner Lenvick, it doesn't supersede the zoning ordinance exactly, but there is, it's a little complicated. There's a whole table in the front of the document that describes what part of this new title applies versus what parts of our existing municipal code apply to a project. So it's a little bit of a mix of things. We didn't intend to, for example, change the city's existing height standards. So but they're duplicated in here. And it's a long table. We're actually hoping to simplify it in the next draft, but it kind of goes back and forth a little bit about what applies out of Title 30 and what applies out of Title 25 for any given project.
Didn't the planning department propose using a form-based, or creating a form-based zoning ordinance a year ago, 6 months ago, and the city council said, go away?
Commissioner Lembeck, I think you're referring to the lot to floor area ratio proposal.
That may have been it.
Yeah, that was drafted and then not adopted by city council. So this is different.
All right, thank you.
Is that it for your questions?
Right now, I may have more in half an hour, 45 minutes.
We're still on the
We're gonna
same
be,
agenda item.
We're still here.
Okay, other commissioners with questions?
I have a follow-up.
Okay.
Sorry to get back to this whole question, but in the current intensity zones, will those be able to be altered or changed? And the reason for my question, there's a lot of construction going on and proposed in the quote-unquote funk zone. So there's going to be some significant changes in the density under current situation within the city of Santa Barbara. And then secondly, add to that encroaching shoreline or other physical changes due to climate change that we certainly can anticipate coming up in the not too distant future. So I pose that as a question.
Yeah, Commissioner Butler, that's actually a good point to bring up because although the map shows the entire city, including the coastal zone, we have to go to the Coastal Commission after this process is done to be certified to use it in the coastal zone. So that'll probably lag, it could be a year or more behind whatever's adopted for the inland areas of the city. So there'll have to be some thought given to, and we asked them to look at the coastal zone and kind of look at existing zoning and existing general plan designations, but that'll be some back and forth with the Coastal Commission on that.
And I have a question. So the state law requiring objective design standards, that's just for housing, isn't it?
Correct, yeah, there's, to date anyway, no objective design standards for
But this
commercial.
document has standards for commercial buildings as well, doesn't it?
No, it has them for mixed use, but not
Okay,
fully
and so
commercial.
if a building were 99% commercial and it had one living unit in it, then would they be able to use the objective design standards for the entire building?
Commissioner House, I think, I'll have to double check on that, but I know, consistent with Senate Bill 35, in order to get that streamlined review, it has to be 2/3 residential and
Okay.
1/3
Okay.
non-residential, and I think this is consistent with that.
Okay.
Mr. Vice Chair House, I think that's right. There's a specific definition for housing development, and for mixed use, it would be that 2/3
Okay.
residential.
That's good to know. Comments?
Vice Chair House, I'm just, if I may, I
You
just want
may.
to echo Ms. Dicey's request to, again, I highly recommend, we chose not to share the video, the 4-minute video with you today, but I highly recommend, it distills all of this really dense information into something a little bit more approachable, and I think it's meant for a wide audience, so I highly recommend that you watch the video if you haven't already, and then I do think, albeit it's dense, but as I mean, you all are bringing specific expertise, and the sooner we get that information and input from you, I think we can be thinking about that. So I know that Ms. Dicey said that we're going to be back in January to speak both with HLC and ABR. But I think having those comments kind of closer to the mid-December point from individual commissioners will be helpful as we kind of go back to the books and look at comments and then prepare for those meetings. So that would be, I think, our request, and I'm just going to echo that again.
Thank you. Well, clearly Commissioner Butler did his homework, and I watched the video, and I got through the entire document, I think, skimmed the latter half of it, but yeah, it is fascinating, and it is a very impressive undertaking, so I
Chair
look forward
House.
to going into it more. Commissioner Ensberg.
Thank you. If I could just, maybe just add one little piece, because I've been involved in this since, I think when we first started a couple years ago, when we did the objective design standards that we now have for the El Pueblo Viejo. And we we created those in quick anticipation of having any projects coming in, but those were the only objective design standards we had. And so we were concerned, or there was concern expressed, about having more possibilities for objective design standards beyond the Spanish colonial revival style.
Right.
And so that is, if that's, Rosie, tell me if I got that right, but, so that's partially why the whole thing, why we're doing this, is so that we also have objective design standards for a more streamlined approach for these larger residential projects.
And other parts of the city.
Yes, correct.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Butler.
Again, so my question would be, how would you like us to get our input, and how can we do that effectively? Because I just heard mid-December. It is mid-December, you know, so.
In 2 weeks, yes.
How do we get it? I'll
Okay.
stop there. That's my question.
And this is November, by the way.
I know, but,
Yeah, December's here.
Yeah.
All right, members of the commission, that's a great question. I should have followed up on that. So if you go to the website that I mentioned, there's a specific mailbox for this project. I think it's just sbds@santabarbaraca.gov. And so you could put all your comments in an email and send it to that mailbox. You're welcome to send them directly to me too, if you have your my email address. If your comments are extensive and there's other ways you want to convey them to me, we could talk about that and see if there's an easier way. But for now, put them in an email or attach a document, a PDF or something to that email would be great.
Boy, thank you. Anybody else have any comments or anything?
Excellent work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Okay, so this was just a discussion item, so there's no motion or anything, so if we are not too far ahead of schedule,
We can,
then I guess we're fine.
Yeah,
We're right on
we're
time.
fine.
Yeah, okay. The next item on the agenda, item 4, is a courtesy review for Garden Street between Figueroa and Carrillo Street. The project is located in El Pueblo Viejo Landmark District and consists of an on-grade surface parking lot located between Santa Barbara and Garden Streets. The project proposes to construct a new 4-story, 3 floors over 1 partially subterranean parking level, 33,438 square foot office facility for staff of the Santa Barbara County Probation Department. Additional surface parking at the back of the lot will be provided. This is a one-time courtesy review of a county project on county-owned property. No final appealable action will occur. So, we have
Mr.
our
Chair.
applicants here. Yes, sir.
Before you get started, just a matter of disclosure. While normally I would have to recuse myself because before July I was the county architect, but since July I haven't been involved with the organization, and the city attorney doesn't feel I need to step out. I can comment and do whatever.
Thank you. I was going to ask staff on that question, but if the city attorney's office has weighed in, then,
That is accurate. Thank you,
okay.
Mr. Lee.
All right, thank you. So, let's see, do we have any comments from staff on this item?
Just to say that this is a courtesy review. It's a county
Okay.
project, so I'm sure Mr. Bradbury will
Yeah.
explain all of that to you. But
And Commissioner Ensberg or anybody else that's not aware, this is just something, we'll just be giving some comments and they'll do with them as they please. They won't be coming back for an approval or anything like that. Okay, so if you would give your names for the record and give us your presentation.
My name is Chris Bradbury with R&T Architects.
And if I could, I'm part of my interruption, if you can turn your mic
Oh,
on.
yeah. Start over.
I know, forgive me.
My name is Chris Bradbury with R&T Architects. We're the project architect.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Shane Mahan. I'm the project manager for the County of Santa Barbara for this project.
Okay.
And unrelated to our former commissioner.
Yes, not related to the former commissioner.
Okay.
Great. Well, yeah, we wanted to thank you for your time in reviewing our project as the courtesy review. We value the city's input in making this a better project that fits in with the context of the city. I'll hand it off to Shane after we just go through the agenda, as we're just going to go over the history and the status, the existing probation building, why it needs to be a new facility, Then we're going to go through the context site, plans, elevations, along with the landscape. The current project is in schematic design, and so we're right in that period where we typically seek discretionary approval.
Thanks, Chris. Really kind of three primary reasons why the county has kind of embarked on this development. The current facilities for the probation department is really outdated. It's nearly 70 years old. It's not efficient to maintain or operate, and we've considered some remodeling or modifications to the existing building, but due to the construction type and the existing systems there, found it to be unfeasible. Also, we need to improve our operational efficiencies, which Chris will show you, but right now we're really located in two separate locations, one at the juvenile hall off of Hollister, where we've converted some juvenile space into some operation space, and then obviously the location that we have right now in Carrillo, where that building, both of these buildings were built in the 50s, and they were not intended for their current use that they're being used for now. And then I think ultimately really centralizing the operations into one location is going to be a benefit for both the county and the probations department and their clientele. And then ultimately increasing the safety and security, not only for the staff of the probations department, but for their clientele as well. Right now, we're queuing people up off site along the sidewalks, and we're also walking clientele through staff offices and spaces that really they shouldn't be. So ultimately, the new facility will be much more efficient than that and safer.
And then just to give an overview of where the site is, it's that yellow flag lot over there. We're only utilizing part of that site, and just a little bit further down, you can see the existing probation HQ on Carrillo Street. So it's really only moving about a block and a half. As Shane mentioned, it's part of the project is consolidating some of the existing probation department functions, some of which occur at the Hollister campus, which you can see is that larger blue dot, and their current HQ downtown into one location to better serve its clients. Also mentioned that, as this is a picture of the existing probation building, that there's sometimes a queue up along the street, and so part of the project is to address the need to bring the clients off the street. Just a little bit more context is it's right. Our site is right on Garden, and it's kind of that transition area right from downtown into the more residential area. There's a mix of 2 to 4 story buildings in that area. And just a little bit more context on the overview picture. This is looking from the south, some of the larger buildings that are more towards downtown, looking more into the neighborhood side beyond that, where it says Figueroa Street. This is looking from the north across the site. Just trying to give you the look and feel of the neighborhood there. And then coming into our building itself, to orient you, there's Carrillo and Garden Street. We really looked at a design that is a series of smaller buildings linked by bridges to break down the mass in a little bit more detail to match the rhythm of the street. We also chose the position on the site and the massing to really take advantage of solar orientation, because the facility is going to be net zero energy, which requires quite a bit of rooftop PV, which you see in yellow, and then carport PV arrays, which you see in red, and that's all going to be concealed from the street, because you'll actually pass through the building and under it to get to the surface parking lot on the back. The courtyard also really helps us maintain views of the surroundings, and then what's also very important is views of the courtyard, where most of the public serving functions will be. Here's just a street elevation study along Garden Street. You'll see that the buildings on the street are grayed out, and then just some of the background buildings that are on the same block. Moving to the site plan, you see on the red arrows our pedestrian circulation. Our big goal here is to bring people off the street and into a courtyard that's actually elevated through a paseo that has a stairway. And in that courtyard is going to be where all the client-facing services for probation will be, for resources where you'd meet with your probation officers, and training rooms. So here's a section showing from Garden Street, that red line, up to the courtyard, and then a paseo to the back parking lot area. And then how the vehicle circulation works similarly, where from the right side, you enter on Garden, pass under the building, and up to the surface parking. We also felt it was very important, as part of the program, there was a public meeting room. And so we placed that on Garden Street with direct access from the street. This is for public meetings for the probation department, not necessarily probation clients going there. And that's in blue. And there's subsurface parking for the probation department because they have vehicles they need to secure. Moving up to the courtyard level, in the green is where the client-facing services are, along with a training room that's in blue that could potentially also be public access. The remainder of the building on the upper floors is primarily office space for probation staff. And then just an overall roof plan with showing the coverage of the PV array on the roof and also the parking lot. Then moving on, we had our elevations. So the east elevation faces Garden Street. Really wanted to make sure that it had a presence on the street and broke down the massing quite a bit. You'll see on the left side where it's more of a blank wall. That's actually set back from the street behind a parking area, concealed behind some existing vegetation. And then on the west elevation, creating an entry from the parking area into the plaza level. And on that south elevation, you'll also see that blank wall where there's a court for the training room. That's up against some existing retaining walls to the south of the property. And then the courtyard elevations where the client serving features are. Moving on, we do have some conceptual landscape plans for street trees, and then also the back parking area to make sure that we have good coverage of shading in the parking lot where the PV arrays aren't, and then also creating some surface level courtyards for staff. Some of the landscaping trees that's proposed. It's very important we're going with low water use plants throughout. And then a more rustic palette for some of the hardscape, with real stone, decomposed granite. And then just schematic courtyard plans where the last thing we want to do is create a courtyard that is devoid of plantings. We really want to get some larger planters and trees in there to make it a habitable space, to bring those clients up off the street and have a place to queue and wait. And just finally, we've got a series of renderings This is an aerial perspective from above Garden Street. And it's, the courtyard really was driven by getting the building depth as narrow as possible so we can daylight the building as much as possible and reduce our energy usage. This is the rendering from Garden, which is already on the cover. And then a courtyard level view. And then finally from the rear entry, creating a sense of entry from both sides. And really trying to have four-sided architecture so that everywhere it looks out, we take advantage of the views, and that it's a well-composed building when there's angles that you can look at it. We do have some information on its net zero energy goals. It's going to be 100% electric building. As I said, the net zero energy goals really drove us to having the courtyard building and stepping it from the south to north so we could really take advantage of the solar orientation.
Does that conclude your presentation?
That concludes our presentation.
Well, thank you. We will open it to public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. If anyone joining via Zoom would like to speak on this item, please go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call on you. Not seeing any raised hands. I also don't have any speaker slips, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item. Back to you.
If anybody out there is interested in speaking, you can fill out a speaker slip, but maybe you're all here for other items. So I will close public comment and open it to questions from the commission.
Chair House?
Yes.
Yes, I have one question, please.
Commissioner Ensberg.
Could you talk about how that queuing works on the courtyard? You're expecting, right now you're having, I'm imagining people are literally queuing up out to the street. So now you have them coming up the stair and then they are getting on that courtyard. I see, do you have like a place where they're going to line up, or I know this is a detail that's kind of unrelated, but I'm just curious how that works.
Yeah, so we have, and I'll go back to the courtyard plan, is you could see there's two pretty straight avenues where there's not much landscaping, so that is the space for queuing into the interview rooms, which is the area to the plan north here.
On the top?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then also on the courtyard, that courtyard image, yes. Just maybe talk a little bit about your thinking around these materials here. Is this wood here, and then we have this wood structural support?
Right.
Is that all wood?
It is a wood or wood-like product. We may go with fiber cement for durability, but the goal is to understand that we're building this structure right now, but using historical cues in different parts of the building. And so this is drawing on more of the Monterey architecture as the entry above where most of these client serving features are.
Okay. And then on the, I think it was the north and south elevations, yes. Could you, or, yes. Okay, this arrangement with the tile, the blue tile, and this arrangement of the windows like this is quite unusual. So I was just wondering if you could talk about what your thinking was there.
Yeah, definitely. So we've gone through a few itinerations of this, and this is really an attempt to break down the scale of that facade so that it's not so monolithically one material. And we're still undergoing a few studies on what that final iteration is, but just using the materiality and insetting different areas of the facade to give some more relief, and there's still a little more fine detailing to go on that.
And you did this twice on the building, it's here, and then there's another window that's sort of similarly treated, or area, I should say, with multiple windows. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Butler.
A general question, this more relates to scope and scale. What's the lifespan of the building? Meaning you're going to gain some capacity, right? From what you currently have today. I'm sure you've studied how much capacity you will gain and how that will be filled over the next X number of years, et cetera?
I don't necessarily have specific numbers for you from that standpoint, but we're trying to design a building here that can be flexible, meaning that if, in 20 years, kind of similar to what happened to probations in their existing location,
Right.
That it can be used for some other use as well. So that's why we're classifying it as an office building, and probations is going to be the first tenant of it. And then eventually the county may use it for a different use.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Yes. Commissioner Lenvik.
Yeah, thank you. This may be a question for Sean or our staff. The county does their own plan checking on this?
The county works with their own in-house planning and development. They consult with us on this project.
Do you not have to comply with any of the city's code or ordinance requirements?
Comply, I think there's a mutual, we have to comply from a general plan standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So we submit I can't remember the numbers, but we submitted.
65402.
Thank you, Robert. 65402, so that then the city has to make sure that we comply within your general plan. And then we have to give you a notice that we're going to do this project. And I think that's about it, just because we're two agencies that are basically back next to each other.
Sure. I know that in the city of Santa Barbara, they have real demanding requirements from the standpoint of rainwater retention on site. I mean, do you have to deal with that?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. And the transportation department is sometimes demanding as well from the standpoint of access and circulation, whatever. You have to deal with them as well.
We have to deal with your transportation department, so we have to get a right-of-way permit from you, from the city.
Well, yeah, okay. My concern is access to the parking garage. I think I know in the city you cannot park you cannot have a parking space within 20 feet of the right-of-way, so that you have the ability to stack and get in and out and not block traffic on the sidewalk or the street, and I don't see that in your current plan.
And one of the things I forgot to mention on the parking is this is not public parking. This is strictly.
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We offset it as much as we could by having the accessible parking as the first one, so I believe
That's
we're
why,
about
so you don't have to comply with the city standards then?
I'm not sure that we do, but we'll ultimately be
Okay.
asking for
Okay.
a permit.
Those are my questions right now.
I have a few questions. Actually, while we're on this east elevation, I think I answered my own question, but at the left end there, we've got the tile roof sloping down and then another structure, but that's the PV canopy
Correct.
back behind the building.
Yes.
Okay, I was baffled about how things work together. And then it seems to me that what you're specifying is real sandstone that's sliced to 2-inch thickness and veneered onto the
Correct.
structure. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not a cultured sandstone of
Absolutely.
any sort.
The goal is to use real stone there and also real clay tile.
Okay, and it'd be 2-piece clay tile,
Yes.
presumably, okay. And the material that appeared in the rendering as vertical wood panels or planks, that's what appears in orange in these elevations, is
correct.
that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the aluminum screen, I didn't see any specifics on that material anywhere else in the plans. Is there a portrayal of that somewhere?
I don't have a good, like a material sample of that, but it's basically a laser cut perforated metal screen for
Okay.
glare control. And there's a few examples we found around the city that uses a similar product.
And so it's not serving a security purpose?
It is
It's-
not.
Okay. So it's more of an aesthetic
Yeah.
choice
You can go
to
ahead and
add that on, okay. I can't think of any other questions. Oh, Commissioner Manuel.
Can you jump to the plan, to the ground level landscape plan? Along Garden Street, do you in fact have that much planting buffer between the building and the sidewalk that's shown in green? Looked like the renderings wasn't showing that.
Yeah,
well.
I think that's showing a little more green belt than we have.
Okay.
But the building is offset or set back from the street, I think approximately 6 feet.
6 feet, okay. And then to touch on that stormwater, do you have any like preliminary stormwater thoughts? And then also like permeable surfaces or?
Yeah, so the current use is a paved area, and our infiltration rates are extremely low, even below the paved area. So our primary strategy is treatment, and we'll have at least two, they're called Filterra treatment basins, right adjacent to the street, that will treat the water before entering the city's storm drain.
What do those look like?
They're below ground cisterns with baffles, and it has planting on top.
Okay. And then also on in that courtyard, I think one page forward or back, is it trees under an arbor on those 6 trees that are in a grid?
No, those will be set back a little bit from where we will have an arbor on the south side.
Okay. In your rendering, it looked like they were under the arbor, but yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, not that
The upper.
yeah, actually, if you go back that upper, the arbor on the very
outside
top.
the chief's office there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's lower planting, those aren't.
Okay.
Those won't be trees.
Okay. All right, that's all my questions.
Anybody else for questions? If not, we can move into comments. Commissioner Lenby.
I'll start if no one else is.
Sure.
The design of the building is I think, quite close to what maybe our normal expectations would be with someone who is coming in and asking for review, comments, and approval from us. I think there's some minor things you could do here that would enhance the quality of the Mediterranean style or the direction of Mediterranean style. So go to the street elevation, not the perspective. Yeah, not the rendering. Right there, you go back. The large, your comment was you were trying to reduce the monumentality or the whatever of the large plaster wall there that's over the garage opening. And I don't have a problem with all that being plaster with some windows in it. I mean, if you look at a lot of the buildings in town, Libero Theater, for instance, are huge plaster walls. There is blank. And I think that it would be more, your building would be more traditional or approaching tradition if you didn't have that recess, but simply had windows in that wall, and the windows could be erratically placed or whatever, and it'd be fine. I don't have a problem with that. I think the cut up on your windows, maybe you should look at that, try to get that more traditional. But I don't have a problem with that being all plaster. I mean, you look at the one that's to the left, and you got a huge plaster wall there with one window. It's okay. Yeah, it works. I think I don't even have a problem with the connecting element between the two buildings, the metal or whatever. I think that can be okay. Yeah, it's the way it is, okay. I would hope that, and also the recess on the tower, I think that can go away as well. I think the simpler, the better. and you don't have to worry about too much plaster, because, you know, but I think you could solve that, you know, that problem there as well as the one on the left, and that would be a, you know, a big improvement. I hope that the parapet height on your roof is tall enough to conceal a good portion of the electric panels, the arrangement. That would be a big help. I mean, I would hate to have a shallow parapet in looking at the back of the panels. So I hope you can get that up. And also, I think that a traditional cornice on the parapeted walls, you know, whatever, probably doesn't cost any more than what you're doing now, and it comes off quite well. It really works quite well. So, yeah, I think the massing that you've got going and some of the features that are there are, you know, you're real close. But as I say, deeply recessed windows, which are traditional, you know, traditional cornices on the parapets, simplifying by maybe illuminating the blue tile areas, and I think it's a, you know, it's a project that you know, we can live with. Normally, when an applicant comes before us with a garage, a below building garage, we are quite insistent on having that opening pushed back, receding from the main face of the building. I don't see that I can implore you to do that because you're going to lose parking or whatever. But we are always concerned about looking into a garage, and as you walk by or drive by, and you look up and you see all that stuff hanging down. Sewer lines, irrigation, fire sprinklers, whatever. So if you can deal with that in some way, shape, or form, at least in the first, 50 feet or so, so you don't look at that when you look in the building, that'd be a big help. But I think you're real close, and I think if you were to sit back and squint and look and say, what can I do to make this more traditional, you'd find that that the things that I've commented on, as well as maybe others, would make this a fine building. It should command respect of your clients. You look at the other governmental buildings in town, the district attorney's office building and the jury building. They all have a presence and command respect for the users that go in there. And I think that should be the same for probation. You want them to maybe straighten their tie up when they go in, whatever. That's all I have.
Well, thank you very much. Who would like to go next? Commissioner Ansberg.
I will go next. I thank you for coming to us and allowing us to have comments on this. And I agree with much of what Commissioner Lenvik has said. I think the massing is nice. I think there's a lot about it that works. I agree with about this blue tile piece, I think, which occurs on that other elevation as well. I think the north elevation is just very simple, straightforward. I think I would suggest that you have this list of elements. I think you could just go through. What's always really good is to see, well, what you could eliminate, and just, editing is the best friend we have. So, and I think Mr. Lenvik has made a couple of really good suggestions. I think I like the stone, the use of the stone. I think you could perhaps use that better, instead of just having it in a couple places, maybe you wrap it more around and connect the buildings together that way. Somehow you could study that. Also, on this east elevation, you have this, I'm not sure what exactly the thing in the middle, is that like a curtain wall? Is that what it is? A metal curtain wall?
A brise soleil kind of thing.
Is it? That's what it is?
Largely how it would function.
Okay. Well, you have that, and then to the right, you've got this other, I'm not really sure, the wooden element on the right.
Mirador.
Is that what that is? Is it a mirador? Okay. So, and then on top, you've got this, this support. Is that for the solar? above?
The arbor.
The arbor
The
above there, or
arbor.
is that what that is?
That's a
Okay.
separate canopy for shade. yeah.
Okay. Well, those three elements seem to me kind of fighting each other, and like, there doesn't seem to be the right hierarchy. And so maybe you could study that and see how they work together. I think you could really see that in the rendering. Right. So you see how you have this light wood over here and then this darker, just how to tie that together, I guess, just study that and see what is it that you really want to prioritize, and then what's subordinate to that. And then if you wouldn't mind going back to those other two elevations, yes, okay, no, back, yeah. I think, I'm not sure you need that wood. I'm not convinced that that wood idea is the best. It seems a little out of character for the rest of the building. I'm feeling like I'm suddenly in a Western movie or something. So, maybe you don't need that. Maybe you can just keep it simple. Again, just keep the really elegant proportions, the elegant layout, and then let the landscape really help you out to offset. So I question that, and then finally, the elevation what other one did we not look at? This one, the west. See again how this stone just kind of seems sort of lost out there. How does it tie in? You can just maybe use what you have, but just maybe slightly differently, a little bit of tweaking. And then, as Commissioner Lenvik said, this window with the blue tile. Maybe you can use that blue tile in some other location where it's a little bit more up close and personal, where you really can see it, maybe some other place. But I think I think it'll be nice. Thank you. And finally also, just so appreciate the work of the probation department. They are so important. And this building should really inspire all of the people who come there for the services and the help. This building really should send that message to those people. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Commissioner Manuel?
Just along the garden facade, the planting areas, since you have 6 feet, it'd be great to get, some height of plant material in there, just to break up the really tall walls. And then if you're able to add any more along Garden Street, that'd be great too. But otherwise, landscape-wise, looks really nice.
Okay, well, I will add a few comments of my own, and I too think it's a handsome building, and I agree with the other comments that have been made. The central building element just seems too contemporary to me, as if you were feeling a need to introduce something different. But as Commissioner Lenvik explained, we don't have a problem with too much plaster. So anything to do to soften that element, I think, would be helpful. And the cornice was a solution, a suggestion. It doesn't look like your garage entrance is all that tall. If you had the room, I could see more of a shallow arch across there in the plaster, and the sandstone maybe more of a wainscot or something like that. So it seemed a little more traditional and a little softer, but I don't know that you have the height. But please do heed the comment to do what you can to not see mechanical inside the garage. And I saw that the light fixtures you plan on using, and those look like those should be pretty glare-free. So appreciate that, and try and avoid the use of cap flashing on the top of parapets and stuff. Plaster those. The only other element, well, a couple elements I have a problem with is the trellises or the arbor on top of the building. Just seems awfully spindly and overly tall. How tall is that?
I want to say it's between about 8 and 10 feet.
It just seems so much taller than that. So anything you could do to work on the proportions of that, and I'm not sold on the aluminum screen. There's nothing traditional about that in the architecture in Santa Barbara, and that could be an attractive design element in the middle there without that screen, perhaps. I don't know, since I can't really see what's going on. And, you know, I agree with the comment about the wood siding or cementitious wood siding. Once again, it seems like an effort to break things up, and if you've got those wood posts, it seems like you didn't want to support a stucco element, a masonry element on top of that. You know, it's, as far as I can tell, not visible from the street, so I have less problem with it because of that, but it's just another thing that you might study some more. I think those are all the comments that I had about it. So should we be summarizing comments, or do you kind of have enough?
Mr. Chair.
Can I make one additional comment to the architect?
Please do.
Yeah, as I said before, I think you've got to, you know, the good bones, the bones are here, it looks good. I was looking at this Garden Street elevation, and you wouldn't see through a mirror door to see white behind the structure. You see what I'm, yeah. The other thing, you know, if you eliminated that arched opening below the mirror door, I think it would give the mirror door more prominence, and it would also leave you with 3 arches, which in classic architecture, you always have an arch in the middle. Yeah, always have an odd number, if you remember your architectural history. And all of a sudden, you would have those 3 arches and eliminate the one on the, underneath the mirror door, and it's into a, looking like a little vestibule or something. You know, no big loss maybe, but all of a sudden, I think the massing of that thing, you come together. There'd be some weight on the left side more than the right side, and you would have some of the quirkiness that you get out of the courthouse maybe. It's, I could be wrong. Other people, you know,
No, I don't disagree
back me
with
off
you.
on that.
That doesn't preclude the possibility it could be a simple rectangular.
Oh, it could be,
window
sure.
right
It'd be
there.
a- yeah, I wouldn't put a quatrefoil on this building, but you could do something else there, yeah. But I'm just looking at the composition here could be tweaked a little bit, and all of a sudden we'd go up from a, you know, an 85 to a 90 or whatever, you know, if you're grading this thing. Yeah, it's a good deal.
Any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Uli?
In my opinion, I think the building overall is too contemporary. And I believe that the mirror door is out of scale, and potentially maybe Commissioner Limvik's suggestion might help that, but it seems to be out of scale. And the block that is sitting over the stone garage entry doesn't seem to seat well to me. There's something missing. So I liked your suggestion that maybe it's a shallow arch and it's just a stone wainscot and not much more than that. And I do agree with all of the other comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, staff, do you need us to summarize, or you have enough comments? Yeah.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. We're fine.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Hansberg?
May I please have one last comment?
One last comment.
Okay. There. I just wanted for the record to say, I like the massing, and, you know, with all the comments that we made, I think it would just get there. I don't feel like a cornice is necessary, just one person on, I don't feel like that's needed. I like this composition. I do think that the comments about the mirror door are really good ones, and I think this gets back to what I was saying, is you've got the curtain wall, you've got the mirror door, and then you've got this big tall thing up there. So if you might even be able to eliminate the curtain wall and just really highlight that mirror door, because that's the thing we all just love. We really like those. So anyway, just wanted to add that. Thank you.
So you've got a bunch of comments to consider. And I'm sure-
One thing about, we're discussing or this center section, if I remember, on the building that Mr. Cornell did on East De La Guerra that has a Monterey style, do you realize that in the back of that complex is a Mission Revival style building? All one complex. And the connecting, you go from that little garden, the connecting element is highly contemporary. aluminum doors and whatever. So he's separated, you know, one element from the other element with a connecting element that is very contemporary.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, that reminds me, because before you mentioned a cornice, I was thinking along lines of something a little more fanciful in that parapet, and I think it's called El Carrillo, which is another Cornell project on Carrillo Street between Bath and Castillo. And, you know, it's just kind of a little flare at the corners of the parapets, and, you know, it would just be another design element that would be traditional and consistent, and, you know, without hugely changing the composition of that element or the middle block there. So, there's no motion or anything like that, so we'll thank you for coming in and giving us your presentation, and
Great, thank you for the comments.
certainly.
Setting a little more.
Okay.
Appreciate your time, thanks.
Thank you.
and feel free to come back.
Yeah.
You won't see him again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, and we're doing okay on time. Actually, right on time.
That's wrong, the clock is wrong.
I know, but take an hour off of that. Yeah, I know it. Well, you know who's chairing the meeting.
We're gonna have to tell Mr. Grumbine that,
Yeah.
like how to keep things on time.
Okay. Okay. Next item on the agenda, item 5, is 481 West Mountain Drive. The series of 7 existing cottages constructed in 1947 are listed on the Historic Resources Inventory. The single residential zone site is developed of 7 dwellings and various accessory structures on one lot and is non-conforming to residential density. The project seeks approval of as-built and proposed new residential remodels, additions, and as-built and proposed new accessory buildings. The project has received a lot area modification and a setback modification. It's here today for discussion of the project and request to continue to consent for project design approval. No final appealable action will occur at this hearing. Project compatibility findings and major alteration findings will be required for project design approval. A Phase 2 historic site structures report for the project was accepted by the HLC on October 26, 2022. So I'm not totally clear why you're here today.
I'll try to clear that up. You want to?
Yes, please, staff.
Well, I was just also going to mention, I do have the minutes from the last meeting where the project itself was heard, which was April 27th. I can pull those up and you can read them.
Might as well,
And-
and that might shed some light.
And while Ms. Burkhart is pulling those up, I just want to clarify a couple things. So just processing errors and just in terms of how this came to you. So generally, when you have a Phase 2 report, you'll see the report the same day as the project. So you saw that a couple weeks ago, and the project was not scheduled for the same day, so that was just a staff error. We said that we would get it on today's agenda, but we missed the noticing deadline. So unfortunately, this applicant would be here today for project design approval, but due to the 10-day noticing requirements, we tried to give the applicant some options given our mistake. And so the applicant is here as a discussion item. There is no formal decision that would be made, but it would help him to get your comments. And again, the idea is that if you feel comfortable that you could potentially say that the project is ready for project design approval, and perhaps that could happen. You could suggest that it go to consent. So that's really the request out. And it would be a formality, and generally that you could grant PDA and say that it's ready. So it does give the applicant some information and not having to wait, but our apologies to the applicant and kind of our mishap here.
Did you get everything you wanted out of them?
And more, hopefully. No, I'm teasing.
No comment.
Okay, well, I will read the.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify. So, so really the issue is the cisterns and the landscape. That's what we talked about last time. That's the only thing really that we need to do, and then give you final approval?
Yeah, and And while we're in discussion mode, I'd also like your input, because I'm just trying to get PDA here. And then I'm gonna go in and do all the hard work of getting the as-built permits. But I don't wanna have to come back and have the entire project for you again. So I'd like to be able to come back for each cottage separately to get final HLC. And I'd like to do that on consent if possible. So I don't know if you guys could
Is that
discuss that.
possible to get different finals?
Mr. Chair, through, to you and the rest of the commission, so we would have to do, like, we can't grant multiple final approvals. The way that it would have to work is if Mr. Andalitis wants to look at individual cottage, we could do in-progress reviews. But ultimately, again, it's just because of the noticing, this project would be today scheduled for project design approval.
Right.
So that would be the decision, but that can't happen. So that, again, the request is that perhaps once, if you all feel comfortable, that you could at least give that direction, go to consent for the project design approval. And then subsequently, there could be in-progress reviews so that, again, the details could be worked out cottage by cottage. But we can only grant one final approval, and the reason for that is because our final approvals are appealable actions. So you've got one PLN record, and it can have one PDA and one final approval. So that's the in progress. And again, it just means that rather than waiting for everything to happen at once across, I mean, this is such a large site. There's a lot of details to work out. That's the process. And again, the applicant is requesting the possibility of doing that at the consent level.
Okay, but wouldn't it also be the case that he couldn't get into the building department until he had a
That's
final
my
for the
issue.
whole thing?
Because I want to submit one cottage, I want to get final, I want to submit that to the building department, and then cottage number 2, get final, submit to the building department, and so
Well,
on.
you'll just have to discuss that with staff.
Yeah,
So-
so I don't want to belabor it here.
But and
Because
if I
it's one
may-
parcel, so it's got one final approval.
One PLN
That's
number.
one final approval, and there's, the city has something called an at-risk building permit, and I think that's a discussion that we can work out with the applicant and review of, again, to understand how close that is. So I think, your comments will be helpful in understanding, how far along.
Okay, give us your presentation, please.
So I'll keep it short. You guys saw this a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Chair House, if you could read the minutes from the last.
I will read the minutes from the last review. Continue indefinitely with comments. Overall, the commission is very much in favor of the project and understands the difficulties required of the applicant in terms of stormwater management. The commission is hopeful for a solution that is both aesthetically appropriate and solves the requirements. Most preferable is a solution that is the least visible if it is located above ground, especially at the front, and the commission would like to see it screened. No commissioners support a wood fence screen and prefer a landscaping screen. Plaster is a potential acceptable solution for the enclosures. The commission will need to see the consulting historian's historic structures and sites report evaluating the stormwater solution to the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation to ensure the project does not negatively impact the historic resources for the project to receive a CEQA exemption. So,
okay. So I'm Joe Androlitis with Androlitis Mixon Architects, and I'm just going to run through the stormwater solution that we've come up with, and then you guys can feel free to comment. I'm just going to shoot through the elevations and then give you a more updated detail on the landscape enclosure for the cisterns. This is unit 469.
let me interrupt you for just a second. Commissioner Manuel, were you here for the last review? Oh, okay.
Well,
Say yes.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Like 2 weeks ago for that review.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't remember one previously. But I was here. For
That's
the-
okay,
so I'm
as
not
long
sure
as
if
you
that's-
were
so
here
yeah.
for the last one, you're good. I couldn't remember if in the minutes it said Drury was absent. I couldn't remember if it said you were absent too.
I was here for it.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Proceed.
so here we have one cistern in the back, and this is the only unit where the owner has agreed to underground their cisterns, given that they're doing an extensive addition, demolition, remodel. This existing elevations propose the unit in questions here. That one's in the back, not visible from the front. 473, we have a cistern here and a cistern here. The rest are in the back or on the sides. That's the existing elevation. Here's proposed. You can see the cistern here and the cistern here. 477, we have a cistern here and one over here. And that is shown in the elevation here, and this one's kind of a shorty one, seen to the right. 481, we have a cistern out here in the left, and then one over on the right, and then one underneath the porch.
What was that on the far right? Is that also one?
This one's on the far right. There's landscape screening already there. We can go back to the photos.
Yeah, that's okay.
So if you'll need to have a little enclosure on that one. So that's here, here, and here.
Okay.
It's 481, I believe. So we have one under the porch here. This one's behind a site wall. Can't see it. And that is shown right there. And then here we have one on the front porch and one on the right side of this little addition. And that is shown here and over here.
What was the address of that one?
I have to zoom in here.
You could just hit the Z key and draw a marquee around. Yeah.
No, what did I do?
I gave you bad advice. Oh,
Undo.
Found it, now we're going sideways.
yeah.
Where's the rotate? Here we go.
There's one. Huh.
Am I hitting the wrong? Well, I'm just trying to hit a button on the trackpad. Do you have a mouse?
There we go. Ah, okay, rotate pages. Oh, free trial.
Let's do the free trial.
Yeah. Oh, what is with that?
I'm kind of stuck here.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see.
Undo, I don't
It's
know.
kind of the path your project was taking. It's just,
Why is it doing this?
Close.
Oh, yeah, close that.
Now rotate.
Now try that rotate button. Oh, no, no.
You just right click on the elevation.
One of those pallets on the right.
Control side?
Oh, yeah, at the top there. There's two of them, yeah. Oh, that is bizarre.
Why don't I try to just close them and open
Yeah.
them again?
I'll move we continue the project.
For a year.
And allow him to do.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. Let's see if we can get
Yeesh.
back to where we were here.
What was the address of that unit?
481, I believe.
What happened there? I didn't touch anything. Is this the one we were talking about?
Yeah,
That's 481.
481. Okay. I forget what my question was.
Wanted you to know
Oh, well, I know, but that was in order to ask another questions.
Well, all right, this is 485. Unit under the porch there. You can see it here. And this is 480, and this may be the one you had a question on. This is 489.
Oh, same kind of situation.
So front porch and then one on the right side.
Uh-huh.
And I think this is the last one, 493, front porch and one on the side in the front as well. You can see here and here. And then if I scroll past all the cottages, I'll get you to the detail. This is an updated detail showing kind of just a basic rendering of what the landscape screening would look like. Then I have a plan of the enclosure, how it would be built, and then an elevation. And that concludes my presentation.
Why, thank you. Okay, we'll open it to public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. If anyone joining via Zoom would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. Not seeing any raised hands. I also don't have any speaker slips for this item, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item. Back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Open it to the commission for questions. Commissioner Manuel, did you have a question?
For PDA, do you have a plant in mind?
Here, I'll zoom in. I listed some plants. Everyone likes bougainvillea, but I have, those are the options,
Perfect.
so.
I'd be careful with wisteria. It likes to pull things down.
Gravity wins. Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Uli.
Just a clarifying question. I think I know the answer, but the number of cisterns by building is driven by what you're trying to shed from the roof that you can get to the cistern to, right? So you might have 1 on one and 3 on the other and 5 on one, or whatever the combination is.
Yes, it's and all the roofs are shed roofs, and they don't connect. So I put the least amount of cisterns I could put on each building based on that. And, well, not exactly, because we had some larger roof areas that would have required a very large cistern that I had to split into smaller ones that they're more manageable in size, so I didn't get this huge thing in front of the house.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. My question was going to be on 481 and 489, and I know we had some discussion on this last time, but you have low but wide cisterns, and we had a concern about it kind of occluding the view of the window, and I wonder if the ones that are less wide but taller, are they not of enough capacity?
Yeah, I mean, I was working with the civil engineer to get the sizes that are required based on the roof area.
Uh-huh.
And so those were proportionally the only options really that I'm showing. I can look, so
the
are
one,
you asking
the
for
other
one?
one at the same address that was narrower but taller, that's not sufficient capacity, is that the problem?
Like the one under the porch, or?
Well, you have one at the left side, under the porch, I think it is, yeah.
So instance, like, here, I'll zoom in on this one. Because I think this is one of the ones you questioned.
Well, this doesn't have the low one in front of a window to the right, but can you go to 481?
Yeah. This one?
Yeah. And actually, yeah, different than one of the others, that thing with Keynote 05 on it was lower and that wide, but obviously you've got to have a enormous one there.
Yeah, you can see the extent of the shed roof.
Uh-huh.
And then that's the high side that I need to kind of collect
Yeah.
on.
Hmm.
So.
Okay. Other questions?
Chair House,
Commissioner Ensberg.
thank you. Do you have to have access into these things, or how do the enclosures just are fixed and you don't have to access the tank somehow, and how do they?
I mean, we're gonna grow a vine around them, so I kind of gave up on the access.
Yeah.
If they have to service them, they just tear it up and rebuild it. Because I mean, you're not gonna be able to.
It's not user service.
You're not gonna be able to open a door with the vines covering it.
Yeah.
It's not a workable solution.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Commissioner Lundbeck.
This whole requirement's bizarre.
Yeah. We're agreed. Any other questions? Comments?
I'd make a motion, except,
Which would be to continue it to consent.
yeah, but you gotta make findings.
We make findings
You
when
can
we
do it
make
at, you can do it at
We would do
consent.
that,
PDA.
we would do that at the consent meeting.
Oh.
But if you feel, I mean, we can pull them up if you like, so you.
No, I want this thing to move along.
Yeah.
And
Okay, well, if you would make a motion for continuation to consent calendar in 2 weeks.
I move that this be forwarded to the consent calendar in 2 weeks with the recommendation that it be approved and findings be made by the consent official.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion.
And I'm wondering if the motion, I wonder if the motion maker could approve that the PDA is fine at consent and subsequent review? Do we want subsequent review of each cottage to
No.
go
I
to
don't
consent or
No,
come
I
back
don't want
to
to see it
you?
again. I don't want to see it again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
until
I
staff
think,
works it out.
I think you'd
with them.
go consent, and
I would love to be able to just go consent from here on
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
I totally agree.
I agree.
Okay, so the motion maker and the seconder both agreed that
Yep.
they could go to consent for final as well as
Yeah.
PDA.
Yep, yep.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I'll take the roll call vote. Commissioner Lenvick,
Yes.
Commissioner Uli,
Yes.
Commissioner Manuel,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
and Vice Chair House.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Joseph.
guys. See you.
And if city staff hasn't apologized to you, let me apologize on their behalf for screwing around, messing it
I
up.
compliment you on your patience and your civility going through this. I mean, really, it is, I don't know that I
On
could,
the outside, I'm calm, but on the
yeah, I don't know that I could be what you are.
Thanks, Joe.
Do we have an applicant here for item 6, or are you for public comment on that item? Okay. Oh, here they are. Waiting in the wings. Okay, we're moving on to item 6, which is the last item on the agenda, 113, 117 West Dalagara Street. This is a revised project. The project site is located within the El Pueblo Viejo Landmark District and includes the W.D. Smith Building at 113 West Dalagara Street, which is on the city's historic resources inventory. Proposal to construct a new mixed-use building with 1,185 square feet of commercial area and 23 residential units. All existing development would be demolished with the exception of the historic facade and tile roof of the W.D. Smith Building, which will be preserved. One existing queen palm in the right-of-way is proposed to be relocated. A minor zoning exception is requested to allow for reduced driveway visibility adjacent to the portion of the existing historic building to remain. Project design approval is requested. It would be a revised project design approval, I believe. And that will require project compatibility findings, tree removal findings, major alterations findings, and an environmental finding for a CEQA guidelines section 15183 exemption. Minor zoning exception is requested to allow for reduced driveway visibility adjacent to the portion of the existing historic building, and an alternative landscape design waiver. Project was last reviewed on October 12th, 2022. So,
Chair
you could
House.
give your presentation, please.
Chair House.
Yes, who said that? Oh, over
I
there.
have to, I have to recuse myself for conflict of interest with the applicant.
Okay. Commissioner Manuel recuses himself. Okay. Names for the record, please, and take it away.
Great. Chair Howes and fellow commissioners, happy to be here again. Ed
I'm
Devasene,
still just vice chair.
Vice Chair, well, Chair for today, Howes.
Okay.
Ed Devasene, architect with DMHA.
Ryan Mills with DMHA.
And Courtney Miller, landscape architect, CJMLA.
Very good. So thanks for letting us come visit you after our last hearing only 4 weeks ago. So great to be back. Since then, we have been working to address all your comments, which we have. Ryan will take you through that. Additionally, we've been working with neighbors on both sides of the building. So our two neighbors on each side walking through, because there's a lot of complexities on how these buildings interact. There's ups and downs and connections and drainage and all kinds of things. So wanted to report that those conversations have happened. They will take you through some of the issues we talked about, but they're going to be ongoing, not just through design review, but even through permitting and construction, because there's just a lot of nuts and bolts and water management and building connections and things. So we'll be continuing those conversations for some time to come. And we'll talk about the ones relevant to design review today. Beyond that, I just want to remind that we're here for a revised PDA. The project does have a PDA already for 23 units under the AUD. So this is for a revised project with the same number of units and also 4 stories as was previously approved. And I'm going to let Ryan take you through the
Great.
details.
Thank you, Ed. I'm going to take us quickly through the comments and how we addressed them. We'll just kind of be that pointed. That's the first section. The next will be the additional refinements we did based on the neighbor conversation. So really those two parts. And then we'll look at a couple additional plan changes. So why don't we just jump in? So I'll read the minutes as I go. Number one, first comment, regarding the mass bulk scale, majority of the commission feels that the 48 feet is too tall and asks the applicant to study lowering it at least a foot or two as much as practically possible. So if we jump to sheet A202, oh, you're already, 201, I'm sorry, you're good. He's right on it. So we've done a few things. We have reduced the overall height. We've studied and we keep squeezing with all of our assumptions we know.
Tell us what the red line represents.
So the red dashed line is our currently approved project.
Okay.
So that was the one from before. So what you see is that silhouette over our current one. But from last time when we visited you, we have reduced. It's really that one 4-story portion in particular. We are now 20 inches under that max height. So we're no longer 40, we're now 48, sorry, we're now 20 inches under the max height for the ridge running north-south, and then on that 4th floor where you know it kicks east-west, we are 19 inches under the max height. So we've, you know, we didn't cut it in half. The request, we got closer to that. We said 1 to 2 feet, we got closer to that 2 feet mark. So we felt pretty good about that reduction. Let's see, we can always go back to questions. So that's the statement. Number 2, the applicant shall restudy garage opening, north elevation with the suggestion to change the column back to a wall, thicken the wall portion. Applicant shall restudy other options on the top of that wall rather than the 3-foot clay tile roof overhang. Study garage door and bring back more decorative options for the proper to the EPV. So sheet 802 and 201. I like 802. Ed, let's start on 802 just because it has a better picture of how that's coming together. So should be the street elevation, street perspective. There we go. If we can zoom out. So we have, let's start at the garage opening. So one of the previous requests, just a reminder, we have reduced that garage opening at its tallest is 9 feet clear. So we're leaving just a tiny bit of wiggle room there. So that's as comfortable as we are at this point, and obviously it drops down at that corbelline. Right where the cursor currently is was that previous column, which the comments were it wasn't strong and intentional enough, so we just created the wall, thickened that, and reduced the man gate, or that passage, to as narrow as it can be, and introduced an arch. So 2 punches in a solid wall. As you move upward, we have covered it in bougainvillea. We'll be coordinating that. But otherwise, now maybe you can go to the elevation. Otherwise, we eliminated the 3-foot overhang with tile. We went back to the original version that we were quite fond of a very simple flat stucco wall with a flat clay tile cap at the top, which is still stepping down. And then we also introduced like a very subtle, I think it's like 5/8 inch deep frieze, or that rectangular space for potential signage there, and just a little bit of a shadow line. So that's how we address the front. Other things to note, we finessed the tower units a little bit. So as you see going up the stairs on the right, we've introduced, there's actually a passage halfway up on the 2nd floor, a new egress passage that's tucked behind the unit. So that door is new. We massaged the arched window at the top and introduced that Juliet balcony. And in that height adjustment from last time, we gave it a little bit more stucco from the top of the arch to our top of plate or eave. So a little bit more bite there. So that covers the front and those. Okay, the gate, the garage. Go back to the 802. So we are currently we are searching for the roll-up gate manufacturers that will give us some flexibility, more flexibility for customization. I know the comment is about getting more decoration that makes it appropriate for EPV. So we're looking into that. That's not very common. So for now, what we can do is we're thinking at a minimum, we have pushed it back. It's about, I don't know the exact, I'm guessing, but it was, I think, 17 to 20 feet inboard. We can get it in dark bronze, and we're thinking we want it as transparent as possible. That's the default, but we're still working on, we'll bring back further details next round, but that's where that currently stands. And while we're looking here, we actually also thickened, you can see the profile of our garage opening, we've extruded back. It previously was, I think, only 2 feet deep. We've now pulled it back to where that man gate passage on the right went. So we can look when we get to the plan. So it's even deeper. I think we doubled it in depth. So nice, thick, kind of neck there. So let me jump to number 3. Let's go to sheet. Are we on 806? We can start there. Applicant shall restudy all awnings. So just getting an overview here is we decided to go with all traditional fabric awnings. So that's what we're doing throughout the project, eliminated all of that, the sort of hybrid trellis with pulleys or anchors. Number 4, arches on the south elevation were too vertically attenuated. I think leggy was the comment, and needed to be restudied. So what we did was we only lowered it by 2-3 inches, but we increased the width between each arch. So just
intercolumniation.
Thank you. I can't say that. So that's the adjustment there. While we're here, there's a couple more. So let's see. Applicant shall study the header depth. So that's that top right covered balcony you see. So we introduced a foot tall header resting on top of those columns and pilasters. And then lastly, on this elevation, study the height of our podium level parapet walls or patio walls for privacy issues, or just decluttering what adjacent neighbors may see. So previously we kept the side on the left is full height. Previously on the right side, we're still breaking the plane, and we like the idea of breaking height, so we just have 18 inches of wrought iron rail and brought the wall up to that point, so kind of splitting the difference there. Let's see, on the patio west, number 6, on the patio west elevation, the applicant shall strengthen the plaster corners on the piers of the 3rd floor, study and refine wood structures. So that's the paseo, the back paseo and courtyard. So let's go to 804 first, Ed, if you don't mind. Has that view, I think.
That prior one was what, the rear view, or what was that? I'm making notes here.
Which one?
Yeah, whatever.
What did the
So this is what
comment refer to?
This is the rear courtyard.
Okay, thank you.
Sheet A804. So what we did was, looking at that facade that we're focused at, the bottom floor remained the same. The second level, we increased the plaster. The corners now are 1'8" on both sides, 1'6", so they're not the same. They're just a bit slender in between, and we kind of aligned them. So now those 3 punched openings aren't quite the same, but it's to align the columns on the 3rd level that we're looking at. And we studied a few things, and we went back and forth. Some of the suggestions were more decorative, but we're still kind of pulling towards El Paseo. So I wanted to keep it as simple as we thought we could, but we did. We bulked up the posts. Now they're 10-bys. They were 8x8s before, and introduced the slightly thicker header and corbel. I honestly think the header is just a little heavy still, but that's the amount of detailing we introduced, and it kind of echoes the stucco punched opening below. So that's how we landed there. Let's see. Number 7, the applicant shall study the railing on the south elevation. Oh, we already covered that. So those were the minutes and how we responded. And then I'd like to cover a few additional things. So these new changes were based on the neighbors' concerns. They introduced a list to us and asked us to change it. So we accommodated most of them currently, and we'll keep working with them. So overall height was a consideration, so we brought that down. So let's see, in this elevation, the top elevation on the top right, so one of the neighbors asked if we could reduce the size openings, and if you could put the cursor on those 2 smaller openings, top right, 4th floor, those 2. So they were equal size to the one you see on the south, so reduced them, brought the sills up. That's a bed wall, so the sills are now just over 4 feet. So it would take a lot of work to see out over there and down to the patio below. So that was one change. The Juliet balcony you see in this view, previously, we originally had 3-foot, like step-out Juliet balconies, wrought iron balconies. They asked that one to be reduced to a 1 foot. So it's really, perhaps there's a potted plant, but otherwise it's not, someone's not gonna hang out there for a smoke break with a little table. So we did that. And then if we go to a floor plan, second floor plan, security was a very big concern. So we had many discussions that we all share the same concerns. So it's kind of a mutual consideration. So in that entry paseo, we have introduced a security gate towards the front here. Yep, see kind of, there it is. So where we noted, so we're proposing a wrought iron gate, details to follow next meeting, that straddles, is attached to a planter on one side and then crosses over the paseo. So there's a couple of residences that'll just be kind of out there on their own, but the bigger concern was security kind of into the courtyards and to the neighbors. So that was something they worked with us on. And then in addition to that, light intrusion, we're committed to minimum lighting, code minimum lighting on all of those patios and courtyards, and then noise and smoking. We're just working with them as a rental project with property management. We have better control over that than if they were owned projects. So we felt good about addressing all those concerns. We created a visual aid based on one of the neighbors' letters. I don't know if we need to cover that.
We like visual aid.
Okay, then we can do that. So that was that second, here we are. So if we zoom in on the section there, yeah, you go way in there. So, all right, so what this indicates is the red section is our podium up against the 121 project at the particular patio of the neighbor we're working with. So what you can see is this. So we did a little bit more work, met with them, and then we pieced together a more accurate section through here. Previously, we showed a typical section. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but that project has several steps to it. So we would have to show 8 sections.
The walkway slopes down.
So now we're showing specifically this patio that's of concern. So we had laser scanning done to identify the top of their wall, so we know what that is, and then based on the neighbor's input, she measured her wall to be 5.5 feet tall. So we used those two things. And so what we've established is their finished floor, and then you can see ours is 1 foot, 10 inches above that, if the 5.5 feet is correct, but that's our assumption. So we're just under 2 feet above. So we're matching her 5.5 foot wall with a planter wall. So ours is 42 at the property line, and then we have a full height, a 36-inch planter for adequate planting, and we're also going to be working to plant perhaps bougainvillea along that side or something that can provide additional height and screening but isn't easier to look at and enhances that experience. So this was the primary diagram we wanted to show.
And is that the worst case scenario, or is it get more extreme as you go further back?
I believe there's one more step. This is unit, I think there was 8 and 10. This is 8, I think. The next one was a step lower.
Okay.
But this is the only one we had information on. I'm actually visiting next week to actually do a site visit and check out both units. So we'll keep working on that.
And Ryan, I'll jump in
Yeah,
here and
please do.
add another neighbor comment from the units from the other side was on our 4th floor, we have a common open space. And something we had introduced early on, but I wanted to reiterate is, again, privacy is a concern with some of the bedrooms near this. So we have a 4 foot deep planter or wide planter there so that our residents are farther back. And so they're not visually as obtrusive. And so as Ryan mentioned, of course, in these projects, noise, smoking, and those kinds of things are going to have to be a property management issue that we manage. But our developer is also the property manager, and so he's committed to design solutions that make managing issues between neighbors and water management easier. So that's why you're getting a commitment to us from now and forward through the process to make sure we get the connections correct between the buildings, et cetera.
I'd like to point out another refinement. So can we go to the east elevation? So it didn't make the minutes, but Commissioner Ensberg made a great comment last time, which we studied and made some changes based on, at the stair tower. Oh, here we're seeing,
Let's go here. Supplemental. Does it
yeah,
show
there's
it
zoom
there?
in there. So we studied how open can that be? So getting those peaks through. So we pulled a few things apart, and then we started putting walls back together. So this is technically by code an open stair, so we had limitations on how closed it could be. Anyway, but we're showing that 3'7" is our site wall. But if you saw beyond that, we have introduced 3 arches, and again the dark gray is the adjacent property, the 0 property line. So if you were to see through the whole thing, 3 arches, we create an arcade on that lowest level, right? So as you walk through from our podium, you see 3 arches, and you go up a wrought iron stair, and then you double back to that next level up to that open arch and a peek through, and then double back again. So we additionally created the stepping wall in 3 layers. We thought that was a nice layering back, and then the width at that top level is the same. We're kind of constrained by those 2 things, but that's an adjustment to this stair. Previously, I think I can't remember exactly, it was a couple of arches and horizontal banding, so we adjusted that as well. I think that covers all the exterior changes. Can you think of any others?
No, but I'll highlight, since we have it here, some of the this is drainage from the neighbor's side, and our wall is this 5.5 approximately from their second floor decks, and so this is some of the coordination we'll be doing from here forward, just water management.
Allowing drainage from the neighbors onto your patios?
When the project was constructed, they do have drainage that goes over the property line that we need to mitigate.
Okay.
It's all right, we have a friendly relationship with them.
That's good.
Courtney, I mean, there's not significant changes. I don't know if you want to add anything, or?
I don't know that I need to. I think our plans were just refined slightly based on the new architectural changes. So it's largely the same as what you saw the last time.
And we don't have a landscape architect here anyway.
Well,
And we don't speak.
I'm
the
starting to take it personally.
Why don't you apply? You've
That's a
served.
conversation for another time.
Yeah.
We can play
Okay.
one on television.
Yeah. Does that conclude your presentation? We will open it
Yes.
to public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I do have some speaker slips today. First one is going to be Shella Common Dumong. And if you could just
Reading.
make sure your microphone's on.
Yeah. The green light should come on.
Much more green.
Yeah.
The button pushed. My name is Shella Dumong. I wrote the letter for the commissioners about the slope of our project and kind of how the impact of the podium height wall was going to be against the patios. I look forward to the measuring that's going to be happening next week, so we can confirm what that footage is. And I'd like to also thank the applicant for the opportunity to have been able to meet a couple of times about some of our concerns, the way that you address them. And I hope that everything works out. So if you guys have any questions about the concerns that we have, or if there was anything that was incorrect or unclear, it's just due to my lack of expertise, obviously, in the field. Are there any questions that you guys had about my public comment, my written public comment?
No, and I'm searching my brain to decide if it's appropriate for us to carry on a conversation with.
I think we'll just hear the comment, and
Yeah.
if it comes up in your conversation later, that's appropriate, but I don't think
Okay.
it's appropriate to respond.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have John Campanella, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
I own a unit, a condominium unit, next door at 105 West De La Guerra. I had the occasion to speak to the architect, Mr. DiVincente, yesterday, and he showed me some more detail on what was going on between the buildings. That was a little bit unclear from the meeting on October 12th. I appreciate the fact that the common area is going to be set back for where actively residents would gather, because it is effectively level 4, and it looks down on level 3 bedrooms within our units. So it would be good from the outset to design it so there's not going to be a conflict, and appreciate the property manager for whatever restrictions they put on the activities at that level. Secondly, on drainage, I looked at the walls that were proposed on the new project, and they abut our project, either patio walls or the sides of the building, and there is a gap currently shown. So appreciate the fact we have to work together to make sure water doesn't collect between the walls or back up into our units, and that we have a way to work together to get the drainage off-site, which would be the key. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any more speaker slips for this item. We did receive written correspondence from Joan Davidson, Lena and Rick Wooden, and Sheila Common-Dumont, which was distributed to the board prior to the meeting. Back to you.
Thank you. I will close public comment and open it to questions from the commission.
The only question I would have is, show me where the bougainvillea is planted that covers the garage opening.
Sure, I think Ed can zoom in on that. There is a planter adjacent to the stair.
I see.
It's narrow, but I think it will accommodate one palm
You'll be able
tree
to
and,
esplanade up across or whatever.
yeah, a healthy sized vine because it is in the ground.
Is that going to get enough sun for the bougainvillea to grow?
I think so, especially if it can get up onto the top.
Okay.
But we'll be evaluating that.
I think you were going to go to the floor plan to show us the depth of that garage opening and maybe also where the roll-up gate is. I was confused about that.
Sure. Okay, starting where the cursor is, you can see our property line, and then this is the second floor. Oh, you're on the RCP. Is that what you're on, Ed?
This is the ground level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So you can see the entrance to the garage there, and then so that depth, I don't know, do we have a dimension on that? I'm not sure.
I
we
see just
do.
below there, there's a
It's
5
big,
foot,
though.
so it looks like it's around 5
big.
feet.
It's
or
like,
something.
I think it's closer to 5, and then that right where the cursor is now, if you can move that, that's where
That's a roll-up gate.
the roll-up gate is
You
set.
said something about 17 feet back.
Well,
Was that from the property line?
From the property line.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
from the right of way.
Okay. But the personnel entry there has just what, a 6-inch, 8-inch deep, thick wall?
Yes.
Okay,
Which we can certainly thicken that up.
yeah.
Actually, we
Or no, that's the,
need to keep a 5-foot pathway through for bikes. So that's why we only had the narrow pinch point and then left it open, so we're not restricting it too much for bicycle circulation.
Okay. Are there other questions?
Yes,
Commissioner Ansberg?
Vice Chair. Thank you. I have two questions. On that elevation we were looking at just a couple minutes ago, where we were looking at the arches.
Yep.
Can we look at that again, and can you show me, do you have a place where it shows the building that's yet beyond that, the building on Chapala Street? Or can you give me an idea? I'm trying to get an idea of when you're looking through those arches. I know there's some places where the units of this building, that they actually, if they're up high enough, they actually get some mountain views up there.
to look through, so from Paseo Chapala through our property. Is that the view corridor you're looking for?
Let's see.
Go to this.
Not this elevation.
Maybe second or third floor plan?
This one.
Right.
Yeah. So the building that is beyond your building, the proposed building, the elevation of that. the reason I'm asking this is because I was noticing in some of the images, I was looking up the neighboring property and was looking out, they had images of their living rooms and such, and you can see that what they're looking at right now presently is across the proposed property and to the building beyond. So what is being proposed is not unlike what's beyond, it's just closer, right? So it's much closer, but you're still seeing sort of a similar view, I can say. It's just on you. It's up close, and of course it's cutting off light because of its being up tighter. So that's why I was asking just what the line was. I didn't know if you had how far up.
So the elevation here, what we're looking at, this is the 121 project to the west side, and this is what they see. Is this, well, I'll walk through that and see if this is what you're asking.
Yeah, go ahead.
And so from this side, the patios would be looking at what you see, that one gap, the front gap is the front courtyard, the rest of our project's beyond, and then these are the couple of townhomes in the middle.
Right.
Those are set back, I think it was between 9 and 11, or 6 and 11 feet. They're kind of skewed like Meridian Studios. And then the last 2 to 3 patios are looking at the rear courtyard. And then the facade we talked about earlier, yes, it's beyond the courtyard. And then at the very south end of our project, we do get to our 0 lot line. But I think we mentioned this before, in this round, we actually reduced. You can see previously it was a 2-story face at that last patio. Now it's a 1-story. You see, kind of get the top half of that 1-story. Then the next level we pushed back, and then the 4th level we pushed back even further.
Right. Yeah, that sort of, I guess, the elevation where you put in the 3 arches.
Okay, we can scroll
Thanks
that
for
one.
bearing with me.
Yeah, no problem.
But this is the alignment of the arches from the other side, is what I wanted to point out. I think is what I wanted to show, where the front court is relative to that.
So when you're looking through the 3 arches, is that what I'm seeing?
You're going to see
No.
right here,
Mm-hmm.
this unit.
Go to the floor plan too. We don't have a camera view set up to show that elevation currently, but here in plan, here's a very clear picture.
Yes.
So you can see, starting with the neighbor to the west, you see the 2nd and 3rd floor deck. So there's a 2nd floor deck there, patio, and then the stair, which is the farthest portion of the facade back, right? So that's 10 feet from our property line, and I think their patios are also 10 feet, so that's a 20-foot distance. And then it gets to a narrow passage because of the elevator core. So there's not at that level, there's not, it really gets pinched down to between the elevator and the next unit.
Well, I really appreciate the effort. It looks like the beneficiaries are going to be people that are within the project, that they may be able to see through and see some different views, right? It's trying to figure out how do we respect our neighbors and give them, even though these buildings are built in a different way than if it was a townhouse, right? Then the walls there would be no windows on the side walls. It would be a railroad apartment, and you'd have windows out either end. So we're having this extra challenge to try to find space there to use, and also to provide access to the natural world and views and everything. So
Sounds like we're in comments now.
yeah, no, sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And then lastly, on the site plan, the neighbor, can you show me how do they use their garage back there? On the site plan, if you go through this building right now, if you go walk back there right now, there's an entrance to the garage that's your neighbor. What's happening with that?
Touch on that one?
Sure. Vice Chair House, Commissioner Ensberg.
Thank you.
It is conditioned, as part of a condition of this project, that when a structure is constructed, that it be closed off. So it was already part of the building permitting process. And in our initial PRT, we actually wanted to keep it open and connect the two. The building department wouldn't let us. It was a very specific question we asked, and they said, no, you cannot. So we'll work with the neighbor in coordinating how that gets closed off. I think we may have mentioned in previous hearings, we're going to be sharing the transformer here as well. The landowner here actually sold part of the land that they developed on, so they put these friendly agreements in place for these future developments. So that's how come we know these things.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Anybody else have any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Could we go to the street elevation? I'm not sure which page it would be, but yeah, so you have a rendering of that elevation.
Would you prefer to see?
Yeah.
Would you like to see that? Okay,
Yeah.
the 803.
So, we've expressed concern about, the people entry at this area, to the right of the garage entry. And I'm not sure that you want that to be something more prominent, or you want it to be diminished. But when I look at that single passageway and say, how could you make that more interesting and attractive to someone who wants to get in there? Well, you could pinstripe whatever around it, but you could also put a little band of brick or something there, which would pick up what's happening on the saved frontage. A little band of brick would bring color, whatever, and all of a sudden your eye would be drawn to that and you'd want to walk there. An idea. I don't care either way. Seriously, I don't, but I'm just saying, I want to, the thing I like about,
But if you don't see it next time, you're going to comment.
yeah, well, whatever. The thing I like about design review and cooperative architects and clients is that we always end up getting a better project. It is, to drive around this town and realize that that's better because ABR was involved or the Landmark was involved, makes me so happy. So happy, and I really.
We want you to be happy.
You guys are good architects and got a good client. So, anyway, I want to go to an interior elevation where you show me the awnings. I don't see awnings there.
Yeah,
There's a couple on
Oh,
there.
okay.
Yeah, or-
So all of your awnings are mounted too high. The bottom of the flance or the valance is at the head of the window or door. And those all gotta be brought down. The reason they're mounted, shown that way is because you're drawing and you gotta draw an awning, and if you had it down to the right height, it'd be obstructing your door and whatever. But those awnings in that flance have gotta be brought down. They gotta land. Every one of them are too high. And you can drive around this town and look at awnings that got put on the building without the careful concern of landmarks or ABR, and they're awkward. So I shouldn't insist on it, but I think you should really bring those on down.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you've gotta bring those awnings down. Now, can you zone in on the column, on the third floor colonnade? Suck that down, yeah. I thought I saw someplace on your drawings where that cut bracket at the top of the column to the beam was a bracket attached to the column. And in reality, what those are mounted on top of the column with a wire on the edge, but they're mounted on top of the column to spread the load. And what's going to happen here, and I've seen it on some recent buildings that have come through, and we've allowed that bracket to be attached to the column, and they're pulling apart and gapping and whatever. You've got to make that bracket on top of the column to spread the load, honestly. Awnings. I'm happy now.
Wow. Well, that was easy.
This is a great project, it really is,
Yeah,
and you guys are so nice, so nice to the neighbors.
Okay, any other comments of Commissioner Butler?
Did I understand that awnings now are fabric? Is that right? Did you consider striped awnings?
No.
You did that on purpose.
Controversial.
Oh, my goodness.
I love stripes.
I nearly had a heart attack.
As long as they're black and white, they'll be fine.
Okay. Is it my turn? Do you have any comments?
You're the vice chair, you can do whatever you want.
Okay. No, I just have one detailed comment, and that would be at that pedestrian entrance next to the garage entrance. I think it should be at least a foot thick. I don't think that's going to change the accessibility for bicycles. And it could even splay back to the sidewalls beyond there, and it just feels more substantial. And you know, I appreciate Commissioner Lenvick's comment about the brick, and one way I felt like it was mixing styles, but then you've got a brick surround to an arch back further in the project. I'd hate for it to feel too cramped there, but maybe a cartouche at the top of that arch or something might be a nice little feature, and it has the address number or something, so that's another possibility. I would like to ask a question of the commission that we have heard from a couple neighbors, and it sounds like all parties are working together. And so are you comfortable with a motion for project design approval today with confidence that they're going to get to a successful resolution?
Yes.
Okay,
I would agree.
okay.
Except the approval findings are so onerous.
We're going to have Commissioner
Yeah.
Insberg already work that.
Who would like to make that motion for project design approval?
I will make a motion for revised project design approval and make the following findings.
There they are.
The project is consistent with our applicable design guidelines. It is compatible with the architectural character of the city and neighborhood. It is appropriate in size, mass, bulk, and scale,
But not height.
and height. I don't recall what landmarks are around there. It's sensitive to the city's adjacent historic resources, public views of the ocean and mountains
Not really a consideration.
is a consideration. It includes an appropriate amount of open space and landscaping. The tree removal finding is
Just A, B, and C.
conforms to the principles of good forest management, that it's is appropriate to the reasonable and practical development of the property, and the character of the immediate neighborhood will not be materially affected by the proposed removal.
There's a little bit more to that.
Major alteration findings?
Nope.
Oh, the topography, that's not appropriate. And that's not, D and E aren't appropriate, applicable. We have major alteration findings.
So just to remind you, there is that historic resource on site.
Yeah, it's a
very-
front, it's a frontage
correct.
that's being retained.
Yeah.
The exterior alterations to the existing historic resource are being carried out in order to substantially aid its preservation. And two, based on our staff expertise, the exterior alterations are consistent with the Secretary of Interior's standards. CEQA. The Landmark Commission finds that the project qualifies for an exemption from further environmental review under the CEQA guidelines, section 15183. Minor zoning exception. We find that a minor zoning exception is appropriate to this project regarding setbacks for reduced driveway visibility. In that it will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other properties in the neighborhood.
You got a break on that one.
Yeah, the Historic Landmark Commission finds the project qualifies for alternative landscape design waiver for planting adjacent to the driveway building. In order to achieve superior aesthetics for the project.
Is there more?
That is
should be
it. Those are all the findings.
That's it.
Thank you.
That was the easy part.
Yeah. Okay, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Thank you,
Vice Chair House?
Yes.
And we have the part about that we are understanding that they are going to continue to work as they have with the community or with their neighbors to be sure that everything comes together in a way that makes everyone happy.
That would be good if you included that in the minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, and the awning comment, and I think it's important, and the other access to the door isn't important, but I think the awning is important.
Yeah.
As well as the wood column post beam bracket is an aesthetic importance.
If I recall, it's a Zapata.
Thank you.
Is that right? Okay. All righty. So, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair House. I'll go ahead and take the roll call vote. Commissioner Uli?
Yes.
Vice Chair House?
Yes.
Commissioner Ensberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Butler?
Yes.
Commissioner Lundvik?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
All righty.
It's, I don't know how you guys, I don't know how your client can afford to do this.
And I'm sorry, Vice Chair House? Vice Chair House, could you please announce the 10-day appeal period?
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me, everybody. Yes, I need to announce that there is a 10-day appeal period to City Council of this motion, of this PDA.
Yeah, I mean, it just, you know, get it above.
And this meeting is
the
adjourned.
fonts, just that, you know.
Meeting is adjourned.
Things